And many of you will remember Dean Lele from some years ago. She was your professor in supply chain in Beijing, Shanghai, Singapore, and New Jersey. Dean Lei is our dean now for the second term. She was nominated the most outstanding professor of the year in 2010. She's the founding director of the Center for Supply Chain Management at Rutgers. She has over 50 publications, but I like my version of her bio better. She basically put Rutgers on the map, Rutgers Business School on the map. It's as simple as that. And almost every week, as you've seen in the emails, there's yet another ranking and yet another one, and in all our different programs. So she has been the catalyst behind this meteoric rise of the business school. And she's a dear friend of the Amber program, a dear friend of the students, and a dear friend of mine. And Lei, thank you so much for making time for us this morning. And please, you have the honor of welcoming them all.
Thank you, Farouk. And thank you everyone for joining us at this very special Farouk event. As you may already know, with a joint effort of our faculty, staff, students, alumni, and many of you, the momentum of Rutgers Business School has started. Just about 2 weeks ago, the US News and World Report ranked both of our full-time and part-time MBA among the top 25 public MBA programs in the US. And our Amber program is now ranked number 2 in the economics in the world and number 15 overall among all US business schools, for which I would like to send a wholehearted congratulations to my colleague Farouk Landana and his team, and Sharon and her team, and their leadership and effort have put Rutgers Amber program repeatedly on the national and the global map. Again, thank you, Farouk, and I wish you, all of you, to have a wonderful event today.
Thank you so much, Dean Lei. Thank you for making time for us. And those of you who are graduating in just a few weeks, that commencement address you will hear is going to be taped this morning for you by Dean Lei. So thank you so much, Dean Lei, for all you've done. Okay, folks, so this is going to be intense, as I've said in my email. And I'm going to start by first acknowledging all the students who are here. We have Executive MBA from New Jersey, Beijing, Shanghai, Singapore. We have full-time and part-time students. We have mini MBAs. We have people who are not affiliated to Rutgers. We have parents here today. We have Jayashri and Satish. I know one set of parents who are here today. We have spouses, their kids here. There are several couples here, all of them students, graduates of the program. So great to see you. And those of you who couldn't get on to this session, you should be watching the recording later this afternoon or later this week, I promise you. I want to acknowledge help from several people for making this possible. I want to start with Prachi Joglekar, who basically got the invitation out, got you registered, and is monitoring the event. Josephine Sears from our Executive MBA program, who has launched the social media campaign. Sharon Leiden, the head of our alumni board and our alumni office, who has sent you the announcement in the part-time and full-time programs, along with Andrea Cannell. We have David Peter Method, the director of our executive education, the non-degree program. Peter, thank you. And Vicky Anderson and Margaret O'Connell for getting the word out to the mini MBAs. I want to acknowledge Dan Stoll, the director of our communications department. All this will be on the Rutgers Business School website and maybe also on YouTube in not too distant future. I want to acknowledge several professors who are here. I'm seeing Professor Miklos Vassarelli, who's taught in all our Asia programs. We have Professor Joe Schaefer, who is our executive coach right now for the Executive MBA program, and you Singapore students will recognize him. He was the director of the Singapore program. So Joe is here, I think with his wife Maureen. We have Lisa Kaplowitz, finance professor and head of the Leadership in Women program, and I think her husband might be joining us too. We have Bobby Bronstein, who has taught in the Healthcare Mini MBA. We have Jesse Cohn. Jess, I just saw you a few seconds ago. So Jesse Cohn has taught technical analysis in finance here in New Jersey and in Shanghai. And Jesse and I taught the last 2 classes in Shanghai. We have Steve Vogiers, who taught the first branding class ever in EMBA. I had just become director, and he had just become category director at Bristol Myers Squibb. Langdana forgets nothing, by the way. And I'm sure I'm forgetting some professors and some speakers, so my apologies to them. But thank you for being here. And we have our very own Kathleen Connolly Harmon here with her husband, Randy. Kathleen, as you know, was the backbone of the Executive MBA program. She just retired a few weeks ago. So Kathleen, you didn't think you could escape a shout out from Langdana, did you? And many years ago, this was Kathleen's idea. Many, many years ago when she said, Farouk, let's bring them back for class. And I said, really? She said, yeah, they want to learn. They want to know what's happened since they graduated. And I said, they'll come back for that? She said, I think they will. And so we tried it once and we had standing room only. Hence, that's how this format was born. So Kathleen, thanks for being here. And I'm sure I'm missing people, but thank you all for being here. And before we start, some housekeeping rules. If you have questions, folks, by the way, the video will come on in the last few minutes after, we're going to 11:15. The video will come on around then, so you can see each other and reconnect with some of your classmates. You can chat questions, put your questions in the chat, please, and chat to everyone, okay? And I promise I will respond to every single chat. Last time I sent responses by email, couple of 3 days after the event, to every chat. So I had over 150 responses to over 150 questions the last couple of times we did this. But if you have questions, ask, jump in. The audio should be on, or just push the space bar and ask me questions. If it's something pertinent and timely, please, I welcome it. If I can push it off, I will. Or if I can defer it for a little later in the session, I will do that, but jump in anytime. I look forward to that actually. At times I will ask you for questions. And I will stay on. So we end at 11:15. I'm going to be there afterwards for questions. You guys can be chatting with each other. I know you're going to be seeing people you haven't seen in years. I'm seeing people, and that's allergies are always misbehaving here. So I'm seeing people here haven't seen in years, and I wish I could see you in person. It's very hard to remain focused and think about economics when I really want to say, oh my gosh, how have you been? And those of you who are not my students, welcome to this session. It will be intense. I'm going to start with a level playing field. I'm going to assume nobody remembers any economics. So bear with me while I kind of do some overviews. But I do not use PowerPoint. I've stopped using it. So it will be all whiteboard. It's harder for me, harder for you, but better for you. Because when you're building a model with equations, which we will be doing, the old-fashioned method is best. We actually crank through the equations instead of me throwing it up on a screen in PowerPoint. So it's going to be all by hand, the hard way on the whiteboard. Okay, any questions before we start up? I'm looking at all the chats and I need to start focusing here. So let's do this, folks. Let's start with, we're going to use Microsoft Whiteboard because I can move it around. And here we go. And you should all be able to see the board. Upcoming inflation, the Biden stimulus, and will America overheat the planet? And I'm going to make this as global as I can. And so here we go. Let's start with upcoming inflation. This part here, I'm going to stop sharing for just a second. So this is a big deal. We're going to talk of upcoming inflation. There is a sense that inflation is coming. It's all over the planet. Everyone's talking about it. So I want to separate upcoming inflation, the expectation of inflation, from past inflation. The problem with macroeconomics and macroeconomic statistics is that most of the data is backward looking. In fact, virtually all the data, all the indices, all the indicators are backward looking. The inflation, the CPI, whichever country you're in, last month's. The growth rate, last month's. Jobless claims, last week's. Consumer confidence, last month's. They're all backward, they're looking in the rear view mirror. That's the problem with macro data. It's all looking in the rear view mirror. But we want to know what's coming. Is inflation finally coming? And people have actually been annoyed with me. I've been like worrying about the inverted yield curve, worrying about inflation. And people like, Langdana, you've been saying this now for a long time. Are you sure? We will see. We should meet a year from now and you guys tell me. But this time, it might be actually happening. So the first big takeaway, forward-looking is very different in macro, looking into the future. And so here we are, we need to get back into a whiteboard and see how do we look into the future. I'm going to maximize my space here. And so we start with something called the Fischer Effect. And those of you who've done macro with me, all this should be downloading, but I'm sure you could use a review. Those of you who are in finance, there are many out here I can see in fixed income, in finance, you will have a financy version of this. You're going to see a macro-esque version of this. So if you're looking in forward in macro, no matter which country you're in, you got to know this thing. This is the Fischer Effect. And here we go. Stay with me now, folks. And you will get a recording. We will send you the link of this recording here. I am recording, right?
That's correct.
Yes, thank you. So you will get a link of this recording and then later on the answers to all your chats. Okay, Fischer Effect, ILT is R plus pi E. So, and it's named after Irving Fisher. So let's talk about this. So here we have, let's say we have somebody in the audience, that's Doug Hatler there, wants to borrow $1,000 from me for 5 years. Okay, so 5 years in the future, he's going to pay me back $1,000. That's Doug sitting there. And I want to make sure that when I lend him the money today, I'm physically better off by 10%. Okay, so I'm really better off by 10%. This is R here. This is known as the real interest rate. And I'm giving you today, as in my macro classes, it'll be a very intuitive approach. It's much easier actually to hide behind the equations and just throw them at you and walk away. It's harder. The intuition is so much harder. So I want to be 10% better off when Doug pays me back in, 5 years? 5 years. I want to be able to buy 10% more stuff, real stuff. So store that away. Now I'm doing my analysis, my ISLM and stuff like that we discussed in class. And I'm thinking, inflation between now and when Doug pays me back is going to be 15%. So when he pays me back, there's going to be inflation on this planet 15%. So how much should I lend to Doug today? Keep in mind, inflation basically eats away the purchasing power of your money. You know, it's like if you park your money in a savings account or in safe deposit box, if there's inflation, it's like termites. It's eating away at your purchasing power. All right. So I want to be physically better off by 10%. Between now and when he pays me back, there's going to be inflation coming, man. I'm looking at all my analysis, looking at all my Langdana notes, and it's going to be 15%. So what do I lend him at? Anyone? So this is here is expected inflation. The pi E is expected inflation. Pi is going to be inflation for us today. Expected inflation with the expectation formed today. And you've all now been unmuted, I think. So come on, folks, really quickly. How much should I lend to Doug today so that I can compensate for the inflation and be better off by 10?
25.
Yeah, thank you. So formed today. And so here we are. So this was 10%. And this is 15%. And so the long-term rate is 25%. So I'm lending at 25% today, where the 10% is the physically better off. I'm really better off. That's the real rate. And this baby here just compensates me for inflation because it brings me just back up to zero. So takeaway number one right here, ILT, long-term rates are forward-looking. This is what we're going to look at. Long-term mortgage rates, long-term borrowing rates, long-term treasury rates. How much does Uncle Sam pay? How much does your government pay when your government borrows from you for 5 years, 10 years, 30 years? So long-term rates are forward-looking. That's the first important thing. All right, so let's keep plowing on. So if you plot these, here we are. Let's draw a nice large diagram. Here we are. This is known as a yield curve, a treasury yield curve. This is time to maturity. This is for US treasuries. This is time to maturity. So this could be 30 days. This is just borrowing. The government's borrowing for 30 days, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, and 30 years. And this is ILT, long-term rates. So when you plot these, it's typically upward sloping, and it's got this convex shape, but it's typically upward sloping. This is a yield curve. It's a normal yield curve. Can anyone tell me why it's upward sloping? The longer you lend, why does ILT get larger and larger? Anyone? What's the intuition here?
Risk and uncertainty.
Thank you, Felix. The longer you lend, the greater the uncertainty. And remember, we aren't just talking inflation. It could be political risk. It could be war. It could be drought, global warming, whatever you like. So the longer you lend, the greater the pi E. And this is supposed to be a very efficient market. Many have considered the US Treasury market to be very efficient. 2-3 lenders, in this case here, are competing to lend to Doug. You know, so I'm thinking, 25, it's as low as I can go. And the other guy who wants to lend to Doug is going, I'm looking at all my forecasting and 25.5, man. I'll lose my shirt if I go under 25. And that lady who's trying to lend to Doug is going, 26 is as low as I can go. Langdana, you're going to lose your shirt here. So we can all compete, and we are lending to Doug at the most efficient price. So there are people back in the day called bond vigilantes, and the US bond market is very efficient, and the instrument itself very safe. Even now, even today, with all our problems, as I've said over and over, the US Treasury, Uncle Sam's debt, is still the most safe asset on the planet. It's the flight to safety asset. You know, you run towards that in times of crisis. So They were called bond vigilantes who would really watch the bond market very carefully and very efficient. And I'm going to give you some reality checks. In everything we do today, there is a problem. I'm going to give you that reality check in just 2-3 minutes from now. But so here is the bond market, very efficient. This is called the yield curve. It's normally upward sloping. All right, so I'm going to show you one more thing here. Generally speaking, in this Fischer effect, we have the real rate being fairly stable, okay? Fairly stable. So if there's an increase in long-term rates, this is very important, folks. If there's an increase in long-term rates in today's discussion, and it's a pretty accurate assumption, if long-term rates are going up, it means expected inflation is going up. So because the real rates are fairly stable over the medium term. So if we see long-term rates going up, your mortgage rates going up, or long-term borrowing rates going up, the implication here today is expected inflation in the future is going up. All right, by E is going up. So what happens here in this yield curve is the long-term rates start going up. It means the long end of the yield curve is rising. Suddenly, if inflationary expectations are going up, the yield curve gets pushed up or gets steeper because long-term rates, ILT, are now higher than what they were before. So the 5-year rates were that, now they are that. And so when the long end goes up, historically in the past, there would be pandemonium. People would be jumping all over the place. Bond vigilantes would be freaking out, you know. One of the most famous bond vigilantes, I hope you can see this, is Alan Greenspan. One of my earliest gifts at Rutgers when I started teaching. It's from Joe Sapone, New Brunswick, Wednesday night class. It says M1, we don't even measure M1 anymore. We've lost control of the money supply. There's a dollar note in the back. That's probably violating some ethics thing, but I haven't spent the money. And I had to refurbish it. So Joe Sapone, thank you, way back. So he was one of the most famous bond vigilantes. And I mention this all the time when I talk about this. There's a comedian called James Carville. He's the bald guy on MSNBC, and his wife's a Republican. She's probably on Fox. And so he famously said that if I were to be born again, basically given a chance to another life, resurrected, and if I had a choice as to what to come back as, I would come back as the bond market and intimidate everybody. I'd just move up a little and everybody would be, oh my gosh, something terrible is coming. So let's see what's happening on the planet. Efficient market, long end rising, something is coming, and let's see what's actually happening. Let's look at some yield curves of different countries. Before I move away, any questions, folks, at this point? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing, and let's just look at what's happening on the planet. So I'm going to give me a second here. And we have I've got you some yield curve plots of several different countries. And here we go. It's very interesting. Okay, here we go. And let's share and look at it. All right, so here, and let's share. All right, so here's the United States yield curve. You can all see this. The blue line is now, as of Friday, so April 16th, okay? So here we go. So the blue line is now, the green dotted line is 1 month ago, and the orange dotted line is 6 months ago. So the dark blue is now the green dotted line 1 month ago, and as you can see, the red dotted line 6 months ago. So the yield curve in America, that baby is moving up. And let's look at some other countries. Let's look at Singapore. Here's Singapore. Yield curve, look at the orange line 6 months ago. Very interesting, folks. Let's look at China. Check it out, nothing much really. Very interesting too. China's yield curve is still not endogenous. And those of you who've done macro with me, remember, it's still not freely market sensitive. It's kind of managed. As you can see, exactly mirror images. So it's pretty much locked down right now. They're slowly going to, when the time is right, let it be open to market forces of supply and demand and risk and appropriate valuation, but right now it's managed. Let's move on. Let's look at India. Yep, the middle part bulging out. Germany. Again up. This is, by the way, this is remarkable. I haven't seen a uniform movement like this ever. France. And Italy. And here we go, Nigeria. I think that's it. Brazil. You can see it's just absolutely amazing. So let's go back to our whiteboard. So basically what I'm saying here is this is a worldwide thing. This is not a flash in the pan. So let's go back to our whiteboard. What's going on here on the planet? So the next logical question is, we now have figured out that pi E is rising in most countries. All the countries I've shown you, long-term rates are going up. Something is actually happening. So we are looking forward. It's a relatively efficient market. So what the heck is going on? But before I go into the macro framework, so here's our roadmap. I'm going to do some macro theory as to why the pi E is going up, what can cause it to go up. Most of the commentary out there mentions 2 of the causes, actually 4. So I'm going to do that. Then we are going to step away and see how this affects the rest of the world. And we're going to look deep into Biden's stimulus plan, and you're going to get my analysis of it. Okay, so that's going to be our roadmap for today. But before we go any further, I have a real world complication. There'll be several today, and they'll be fairly annoying, guys. I'm sorry. So here we are. I've just finished telling you that we have a really clean, efficient diagram, cool market. You know, the bonds know best, bond vigilantes, and, you know, long end goes up, something's coming. It's macroeconomic radar. Somebody, once I was in China and we had somebody from the American embassy, this is time to maturity. He said, that's actually a macroeconomic oracle, like an oracle looking into the future. And I said, wow, that is beautiful. And so just when I finish saying all this, I'm going to tell you that, you know what? We messed it up. So we have something called Operation Twist. Let me tell you about it. These things are depressing, you know. We have a knack for doing this. So Operation Twist is, oh, wait. Get ready for this. The long end's going up. Bad. People get scared. You know, James Carville, you know, I'll come back and intimidate everybody. So let's do something. Let's artificially bend it back. Let's twist it down. And this is called Operation Twist. Operation Twist, where we artificially bend the long end down. So what do? We basically pump more money into the long end of the yield curve. So we buy, the Uncle Sam or the government buys up long end bonds and pumps more money into the long end. So drives the prices of bonds, pushes down the interest rates, the supply of loanable funds at the long end. Long end is 5 years and over, and artificially pushes it down. There's only one way, only one word for this: asinine. Asinine. I'll never forget Giles Mellon. You know, some of you remember him. He was the executive MBA director. He's the man who brought me to Rutgers from Virginia Tech after my PhD. And God bless him. He's not with us now. And so Giles calls me up when in the subprime crisis, 2008. And he said, Farouk, can you believe it? It's Operation Twist again. I had no clue. In graduate school, this is a real world deep policy thing. Giles was a banker's banker. Giles had Volcker's job at Goldman Sachs when Volcker went to the Fed. He was that kind of a banker's banker. And I said, Operation Twist? He said, Farouk, the Kennedy administration tried it. It's called Operation Twist, by the way, because when they tried it, the song on the radio was Chubby Checker's Twist, as I mentioned at an alumni event. That's why Operation Twist. You're twisting it down, well, the twist. And of course it won't work. Think about it. Here you're bending it down, and what are they expecting people to say? Hey, wait. Long-term rates are down. Hey, I'm going to go out and buy a house, buy a vacation home, buy a car. I'm going to extend our company's labs. We'll do more clinical testing, more vaccine production. Of course not. People are looking out the window, and if confidence is low, they see it. There's a trade war. There are riots. There's global strife. There are people climbing up the walls of the Capitol. There's COVID. By pulling down the rate, you're not going to change anything. And I think policymakers throughout history have made this huge mistake. Of course, we are not geniuses. We may even be dumb, and I include myself. The population may be dumb, but we are not stupid. There's a big difference. You can't just fool people and say, hey, wait a minute, though. Everything looks bleak, but long-term rates are down. So come on, go ahead. Start capital investing. Of course, it's not going to happen. It's like you take a radar, you're looking through a radar, you don't like what you see, you reach out and you paste a picture that's better, for calendar picture. That's happened last year again, Operation Twist. So if you're watching the yield curve, be careful for weirdness. I would look at mortgage rates in your countries, in America too. Those babies are not twisting down. Those lenders are twisting it up if they have any way to twist it. So I would look there. And those of you in the mortgage market have already seen your mortgage rates going up. So why is PI-E going up? And so here we are. Here's the equation. Let's go back to black now. Stay with me. Fischer effect, ILT is R plus PI-E. And we have PI-E is going up, not just here, but across the planet. Long-term rates are going up. So why? Why is this happening? What are all the macroeconomic reasons? Let's do the theory really quickly first. And by the way, this is interesting and kind of scary for most people because we haven't seen inflation in many of our countries. After Volcker, after 1982 in this country, inflation has been a non-problem. Volcker squashed the money supply and shut down inflation. But I just want you to understand that ILT in the late 70s and early 80s, if you got a mortgage, that's 30 years borrowing for a house, right? Fixed rate for say 14%, as Peter Murphy mentioned, he spoke in my class, my co-author and from my 5th book, EMBA graduate. If you got 14% back then, you were a rock star. Today, by the way, it's 3.5, 3, 2.5. If you got 4, you could do better. 14% then, you'd stop conversation at parties. People would say, Joe, shh, Joe, tell them what your mortgage is. Tell them. Joe would go, my mortgage is 14%. People would go, whoa, Joe, give me the number to call. You got a connection. Or yeah, please, how did you do this? That was the world we were in. So we have not been used to inflation. It's going to be some adjusting. So why is PI-E going up? Well, let's look at some macro now. I'm going to clear the board frequently, folks, because this baby sticks when there's too much data on it. All right. So why is PI-E going up? Let's whip through some macro theory. And here we are. Nice large diagram. here is the Keynesian aggregate supply. This is Y, this is output on this axis. And many, if not all of you, have seen this with me. And those who haven't, I'm gonna do everything from scratch. This is inflation on this axis. This is percentage. These are all percentages, by the way. So this is P, this is Y, and this is aggregate supply here. This here is Y maximum at full employment. So that's the upper limit of the economy here at full employment. Okay, so that's Y max, sorry. Y max at full employment. And this is the aggregate demand. This is AD today. And this is some price level or inflation rate today. Let's say it's 1% today. P0 today. And this is Y low, some low GDP today. So here's where we are. And so what Keynes taught us in the 1930s, this is the Keynesian world, and keep in mind, our new president here is a high priest Keynesian with a twist, pun on the last twist we discussed. So I'm going to come to that, but he's surrounded by Keynesians. This is a Keynesian world we are living in. Supply siders, who we will talk about, are fuming, writing nasty editorials in the Wall Street Journal, grumbling and muttering. But as you will see, Biden might be closer to them in some areas than they think, than is apparent. I'm going to take you there. All right, so here we are. What Keynes taught us was how to move this aggregate demand to the right and jumpstart the economy. So here we are. When you pull the curve out, I'm putting this in blue. So you pull, this is what he showed us in the Keynesian world. If you pull this aggregate demand out to the right, the government has to get involved, which was a big deal. The central bank has to get involved, not stand by, no laissez-faire, push the curve to the right. This was called demand side stabilization. And look at this. You would get Y higher, Y1. Let's call this Y1, AD 1. And so how do you move the curve to the right? Well, Keynes said you can increase government spending. So increase it. Now, listen carefully here, folks. When this was first put together, the model was built. G was infrastructure, Tennessee Valley Project, Hoover Dam, China 1.0, India 1.0, roads, bridges, dams, power grid. Later on came different kinds of government spending, welfare, unemployment, interest on government debt, subsidies. That's a hot potato. Okay, so as soon as I mention G today, different parts of the room erupt. Some people say, that's good G. Some people say, no, that's good G. So I'm going to stay away from that now. This is good G. Let's not get into that, but it's a hot potato. All right, so good G, and we'll talk about productivity. That's where Biden's going or not going with this. So one step at a time. So increase G, roads, highways, dams. Decrease interest rates by increasing the money supply. So the central bank gets involved. So the central bank creates more money in plain English. Each of these comments is like a 15-minute, 20-minute discussion, but I can't. So to lower interest rates, the central bank creates more money. When you increase the supply of anything, the price of the thing goes down. You increase the supply of houses, the price of houses goes down. Increase the supply of money in circulation. Quantitative easing is coming in our discussion. You bring down the price of money. So increase M, decrease interest rates. And when you decrease interest rates, so let me write this down here real quickly, increase the money supply, decrease interest rates. When you decrease interest rates, capital investment, capital I, should increase. And therefore, the aggregate demand should to the right, should increase to the right, increases to the right. And capital investment in macro is not stocks and bonds, as you remember. It's new plant and equipment. It's housing. It's new labs. It's new construction. It's what companies borrow for capital investment, okay? So that's what's supposed to happen. So lower interest rates, and suddenly Bristol Myers Squibb, Johnson, Baidu, whichever country you're in, Tata borrows more money and builds new stuff. We will see there's a little catch there too. Then decrease in taxes. So here we are, those are the three buttons we press. Decrease in taxes, Joe Biden, please note, I'm coming to that. Somehow we'll be done by 11:15 and I'm going to be completely exhausted. So this is how you move the curve to the right. Those are the three policy instruments. So three policy instruments are G, money supply or decrease in interest rates, and decrease in tax rates. There are also two other things that cause the curve to shift to the right. And those are not policy instruments. It's C bar going up and I bar going up. And so in green, these are, please make a note, C bar is consumer confidence, okay? C bar, consumer confidence, and I bar is investor confidence. Sadly for policymakers, those are not policy instruments. You can't press a button and I can't press a button and make your confidence go up. I can't say, guys, everyone, feel better. On your way home, after you log off here, rush out or go online and buy a car. Or spending is good for the country. As soon as the session's over, call or go online and order really, really expensive food for your top 50 friends. Include me in that. So please do it. Feel better. No, you're not in a cult or a commune. That's not happening. So those are endogenous, but very, very important. So if confidence rages in business confidence, I bar is investor confidence, C bar is consumer confidence, that pushes the curve out to the right too. Also, please note, I bar and C bar, very important. They're not buttons to be pressed. They're endogenous, they're organic, but they hate taxes. Just talking about tax increases damages them. Joe, wait, don't raise them now. Wait, talk to me first. Anyway, so they hate tax and they hate too much regulation. They love communication skills. You know, you have to give hope. In an economy on a planet without hope, and I'm not being melodramatic here, this is true. If there's darkness out there, you can increase G till you're blue in the face. You can lower interest rates till you're blue in the face. You can cut taxes till you're blue in the face. Trump did. Employers won't rush out and hire more MBAs. It's not going to happen. You need the C bar and I bar. These things don't happen in a vacuum. You need to feel safe. You need a person who gives hope. So store that away. Joe's got that. So then you keep moving to the right. And here we are. So here is AD in the future. And by the way, this was known as stage 1. This is known as stage 2. So the aggregate demand moves to the future. And look at this, folks. Prices start rising. This is P. Here we go, folks. P in the future. So you see this, here's one answer right there. This difference between inflation today and inflation in the future, there, that right there is pi E going up right there. So takeaway number, another takeaway, the expected inflation that's coming is anticipating growth. This is a good thing. This is a demand pull story. The aggregate demand is pulling inflation up. This is a Keynesian textbook stimulus, and stage 2 is a happy stage. Governments get re-elected in stage 2. Policymakers love stage 2. It's moderate growth, moderate inflation. So you can see that in ILT. I miss my giant whiteboards like you cannot imagine, by the way. So you can see that as this goes up, that's pushing our long-term interest rates up. So this is the benign, happy scenario. Stimulus is coming, government spending is coming, and we'll talk about it. Interest rates have been low, but they haven't mattered. It's called the liquidity trap. Low interest rates didn't do anything, but this G might do the trick. If interest rates are low, you don't rush out and borrow if confidence is low. So it's called a liquidity trap, and we had a whole session on that. So here we are, but there's a concern. What's the concern, folks? Can anyone, any guesses? People have been worrying about it. Larry Summers has been worrying about it. As we are moving.
Inflation.
Who was that? Who spoke?
Cliff.
Thank you. So what happens if this baby keeps moving out to the right? Here we go. The stimulus is too big in the future. And it is actually a jaw-dropping stimulus, folks. 1.9 trillion, that was just the warm-up act. That's just the cash infusion. There's another over 2 trillion. That's the second part. This is jaw-dropping. Biden has gone all out. He's put all his cards, all his troops have been thrown into battle. I'll talk about it. It's an amazing thing. So what if it's too much? And you have Larry Summers saying, oh my gosh, it's too much, you know. So what is this known as? If you push it too far to the right, look at this. You're now rattling against Y maximum. This is Y maximum here. And so this, I'm putting a star here, this is known as an overheated economy. So that's overheated economy. So it's dangerous. What inflation starts rising more, you have sap bubbles. And sap bubbles bubbles live here, folks. So a sap bubble is a speculative asset price bubble. Sap is speculative asset price. And so right in there, in that flashy part, that explosion, the economy overheats. It's like pushing your car to the maximum. You know, you reached Y maximum at full employment. There's no excess capacity. You're running out of rare metals. You're running out of high-skilled labor. And inflation starts picking up. It's overheated. And you have madness taking place. The dot-coms or SPACs today, or rare metals, or housing. Take your all S&P 500, whichever, take your pick. So bubbles start forming, crazy things start happening. Baseball cards start selling for 1.3 million. You saw the other day. Digital art starts selling for 6.8 million. Cryptocurrencies now valued at 1 trillion. So weird stuff starts happening. Too much money, too much time. Weird stuff starts happening. Be careful. So this is an overheated economy. And then if this baby, so this is what we're worried about now. Some are saying it'll be the green region and all's going to be well. Some are saying, wow, this is too much, man. Biden has pushed it too far to the right. And that's why long-term rates are going up. And that's why expected inflation is coming. It's going to be nice for a while, but then, whoa, it's going to be overheated. But this goes on. If it doesn't stop in time, this is called stage 3. You rush up into stage 3, and stage 3 is not a good stage, not hyperinflation. Stage 3 is inflation going from 22 to 35 to 42, 22, 35, 42, 55. Whoop, 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 whoop. Whoop, 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 whoop. It races up quickly. You don't want to be in stage 2. It's overheating plus, plus, plus. So this is the conventional story. But you heard this, the 2 scenarios here, green or red. You folks tell me at what point, if you were a central banker here today, and if I told you, you know what, you're going to be there in 15 months, at what point would you hit the brakes? Anyone?
After Christmas.
So after, tell me again.
After Christmas.
After Christmas. In this diagram.
Before the parabola starts getting too exponential.
Thank you. Who's this speaking?
Teg, Big.
Hi, Tig. How are you?
Hi, Professor.
Hey, good hearing your voice again. So here we are. So right
This-
in. Just give me a
Sorry,
second. Go ahead.
sorry, this is Samir. I would say we have to put the brakes now.
For the our economy now, okay, hang on to. So what I'm doing, Samir, is I'm giving you like a framework, a theoretical framework. Then we're going to step back and see what's actually happening now. Okay, so this is just, I'm bringing you all up to speed right now. Okay. So you are one of the Larry Summers people saying, oh my gosh, stop right now, stop right now. So we'll see. But here we are, just to bring everybody right in here. In late stage 2, you do a soft landing. This is called a soft landing. You don't wait till overheating is obvious. Don't wait till in here. It's too late. It's like stopping a train or steering a ship. Excuse me. So right in here, you do a soft landing. And how do you do a soft landing? You'd have to do it fast. One afternoon, you decide, you know what? If I don't tap the brakes now, we're going to be in stage 3 in 6 more weeks or 3 months or 5 months. So what's the most common way of slowing down an economy?
Raise the rates.
Yeah, raise interest rates, because that can be done in 20 minutes. So to move it down, you basically do the opposite, decrease G, raise taxes, and this is the most common one, decrease money supply or increase interest rates. And this is the one we use because can you imagine decreasing G in an afternoon? I mean, you know, Biden's building a new department for infrastructure expenses. What, shut down the whole department? 4 years, 8 years to do that. So it's typically done by raising interest rates. And I'm going to clear the board and just make a comment about global economies here. Clear the canvas before we leave this. And so if we are here, if we are overheating, if this baby overheats America, we're right in here. Let's put this in the green part. So here's the green part. Here's the red part. Over there. Come on. Here's the overheated part. So right in here, we're doing a soft landing by increasing interest rates. And this is Y, US, P, US. Please listen carefully here. This is going to be devastating for countries who have tied the currency to the US dollar. So many countries, especially transitory countries, emerging economies, many of them have tied the currency to the US dollar to give them a stable export platform, and sometimes for monetary discipline, you know. So basically, if it's 10 of a foreign country, 10 units of currency of a foreign country are equal to 1 unit of American currency. So 10 foreign is equal to 1 American dollar. It's called a peg, and it's a hard peg in this case, which means it's fixed 10 to 1, hard peg. And what happens, just in plain English, for that peg to remain 10 to 1, that foreign country has to mimic what we do with our interest rates. If we push up interest rates, they have to push up interest rates too, to keep it 10 to 1. Because if we push up interest rates and they don't, their money will flow into our country because, you know, move to America and park it in America. Just put it in a CD, earn high and buy treasuries, earn high interest rates. So they lose capital. And when you leave this foreign country and come to America, you dump the foreign country's currency. It gets weaker. So it breaks the peg. It becomes 15 to 1, 18 to 1. So to ensure the peg, if we raise rates, they have to match the rates. If we lower rates, they have to lower the rates. It's an emerging economy dilemma. It's a painful thing, which we are oblivious to actually in this country. There are like, at this point, there may be 26, 32 countries pegged hard or pegged with some managed pegs, plus or minus 2%, whatever, with the US dollar. So somebody tell me, what's the problem then? If we overheat and raise interest rates, they will have to match us by raising their interest rates. And they're lying awake at night, by the way. Our overheating scenario is terrifying to them. Why?
Because then we'll potentially decrease money and increase taxes.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
if
Their economy
if-
is not in the
if
same
they
state as ours is.
Yes, and please note, and those of you who are not my students, so if you hear, I can't say no. So if you hear a long yeah, it means no. I have this issue. I can't say no. So,
if Prof, if they have to push up interest rates, then they can't stimulate their economy, right?
yes,
Yeah,
I know this
Jay.
voice, Jay. So here we are.
Jay from Singapore.
Yes. Hey, Jay, I know all these voices. It's like a kaleidoscope, you know. And what's confusing is you can be a Singapore person in Switzerland right now, sending me an article about something in Texas. That's what my world is. I go, whoa. So here we are. This is Y rest of the world. And let's say this is Y low. This is rest of the world and P0. And let's say this is aggregate demand, aggregate supply. So this is something that's keeping them awake at night. This is the foreign country here. And so if they are pegged to America and America is right in here and we are doing a soft landing, they have to do a soft landing. They have to also raise interest rates, also decrease them and increase interest rates. And they're going to just make their economies worse. They haven't even come out of this COVID recession. So I'm going to come back to this, but just an early transmission mechanism. Those countries who are pegged, who are kind of still early in stage one, are thinking, darn, if this baby goes to overheating, they're going to raise rates. We better be ready for it because our currency is going to weaken, or we should start weakening our peg in advance. So very stressful for them. So early comment. Okay. One reason was moving. So why was pi E going up? Aggregate demand moving to the right in green or red. Reason number two. And this is the first two you have seen in the news. Reason for pi E going up. Okay, stay with me now. So this story here, which we just did, this is called demand pull inflation. This is what Keynes taught us. Demand pull inflation. This is pi. And so here it's called pro-cyclical inflation. Pro-cyclical is as P goes up, Y goes up. So we got this down. Keynes taught us how to jumpstart, how to soft land. We got this. There's another kind of inflation. Here we go, folks. It's called cost push. And this baby is a killer. Cost push inflation. So here's aggregate supply. Here's aggregate demand. And here is P0. And this is happening to all our economies, by the way. Cost push inflation is also called commodity inflation. Wham. In this case, wham, the aggregate supply gets shoved to the left. Oil shocks. There's the old textbook example. 9/11. Flooding. By the way, India, much of India's inflation is cost push inflation. Monsoons, or too much monsoons, or monsoons failing, drought. And here we are, folks, COVID. COVID, shutting down supply chains, wham. And cost push inflation is really hard because it's counter-cyclical. Look at this. Prices go up here and Y goes down. So it's the worst of both worlds. Now, the other one was demand pull. P went up, Y went up. This is cost push inflation, COVID, wham. Global turmoil, supply chains, drought, famine, take your oil, the tankers stuck in the Suez Canal, wham. And so there's no macro, listen carefully now, typically cost push shocks go away after a short period. 9/11, oil shocks, whatever is happening in the Gulf kind of blows away temporarily again, the flooding, the drought, but COVID is still here. And the variants are still here. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. And the deal is some of the countries that are richer and better supply chains and have the vaccines are coming out of it. The poorer countries are still in it, the ones without the vaccine. And so, David Malpass, the president of the World Bank, he said that it's an asymmetric shock. In fact, I have a quote here from him. Really a poignant quote. So he said, the president, he said, this is a pandemic of inequality. Poorer countries are falling behind. Okay, so it's a pandemic of inequality. So nevertheless, supply side shock. COVID's not going. And it's not going away. So now we saw the shortages in semiconductor chips, in containers. Empty containers are going from America to China. Full containers are going from China to America. Container prices have gone up 6 times now since January. My executive MBA students who own trucking companies, Herman Trucking, tell us that it's just astronomical. They've never seen anything like it. And semiconductor prices are going up even more now. I just saw that Taiwan, where 65% of all semiconductors are made, Taiwan Semiconductor, TSM, I think, is the company. They're running out of water. There's a drought in Taiwan. So they're diverting their water to Taiwan. See, Taiwan's water comes from hurricanes, typhoons, that's their hearts. That's how they get their water. So no typhoons, no water. And this plant, semiconductors, the one plant uses, you ready for this? 60 Olympic swimming pools, 60 of water a day to make semiconductors. It's so water intensive, and so there's a huge drought there now. So it's going to even get worse, supply side shock. And by the way, just on that note, all of us running around going carbon free and carbon footprint. Yeah, but carbon free doesn't mean that it's free. There are other ravages on our environment, as in water, as in lithium, as in cobalt, so there is damage done no matter how you look at it, just as an FYI. So supply side shock, cost push inflation, and so that's another reason why pi E is going up. So when we look at ILT, is R plus pi E. Well, the other reason is it's not a demand pull thing. It's this baby here. It's causing, or it's both. Copper, zinc, building material, lumber, commodities have gone up. So that's significant. And some countries are hit harder than others, countries who import these commodities more. So reason number 2, cost push inflation. And there are 2 more coming. Any questions up to this point? And then we will look into the Biden thing and look at some transmission mechanisms. Any questions, folks?
There's a question from Chris. He's asking, do tariffs cause cost push inflation?
Yeah. Which Chris is this? Do we know?
Chris, if you could speak up, I can't really see your last name, unfortunately.
Banco.
Oh my gosh.
2015.
Hey, of course. Are you kidding me? Hey, Chris. So yeah, yes, it does indeed. And we will see that that's another part of India's problems. We will see Modi is trying to be trying to increase productivity. He's trying to deregulate. But India also has tariffs stuck in there. So I'm going to come to India later on. And that's another part. India's got cost push inflation and the tariffs thing. And historically, Chris, tariffs raise the prices of relative goods, goods that compete with imports. So historically, they don't affect overall inflation. They affect inflation in certain pockets. But if you have across the board tariffs, then yeah, they're unnecessarily putting up price pressure. Short answer to what you're thinking, Chris, we need to walk away from the trade war. Both America and China need to de-stress, walk away. But we have, these countries have whipped up their populations to such a frenzy about this trade war, each one painting the other country as the bad guy. So now it's harder to walk away, you know. Both have, America has checked the box tough on China, and China has checked the box tough on America. Okay, now that you check the box, now we need to figure out how to uncheck the box, because it's going to make both of us better off and the whole planet better off. And it's expensive. And I've done a session on trade. If you want to know about tariffs, poke around on the link to the blog site, everyone. You have it in your chat somewhere. And there's a whole session on tariffs. I think it's a video link.
Farooq, this is Murthy.
Yeah, hey.
On the semiconductors, okay, how are you, sir? On the semiconductors point, okay, so I would like to add one recent insight from our company. The whole semiconductors is a big problem. The complete strategy itself has been changed, like our company, many other companies. So I can't speak of actually which product we are not launching this year, but their whole shift of actually game in terms of the product launches due to the semiconductor supply problem, and which is a very big problem.
Wow. So can you tell us which company? If you can't tell us, that's okay.
Yeah, I'm from the Samsung, Farooq.
Yeah, of course. Oh, you are the Samsung. Well, yeah, we have to do something on 5G soon.
Oh, sure, definitely, Farooq.
Yeah, and so everyone is retooling. If you could turn off, the microphone, please. Yeah, so everyone is retooling, rehiring. It's a global thing. Like Japan had a big plant. I can't remember the name. They had an earthquake there and a fire there. You know, Texas had 2 plants that were shut down because of the weather issue, and they haven't reopened. So it's almost like semiconductors is being plagued by one problem after another. And you're right. Different companies who are not in semiconductors are moving into semiconductors. Thank you for that comment. Okay. And I'm hoping you guys retool soon. So third reason for PIE, this is a big one, folks, is the budget deficit. Okay. And so historically, budget deficit of G minus T is greater than 0. That means it's a budget deficit. And real quickly, we've done a whole thing on modern monetary theory. So I'm just going to give you what you need to know for today. In the past, our first book was on this. In the past, if G minus T, the budget deficit divided by Y, which is the GDP, so the budget deficit divided by GDP, if it was under 5%, it was sustainable. What does that mean in plain English? Anyone? This deficit under 5 means you could have it for the forever and ever and ever. Someone help me here?
The dollar stays a safe haven,
Yeah.
not even more than 5%, and therefore the devaluation of the currency is not extreme. It's just monetary. Yeah. Okay. No.
No, you're there. You're there. Who is this?
Felix Holcomb.
Felix. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes.
2015.
Yes. My God. So
New
yes.
Jersey and Shanghai.
Of course. So here we are listed, that you're there. So basically under 5%, it meant that I could borrow from Felix for this year, and I'm Uncle Sam or whichever government you like, and I'm a safe government. This is very important. For this to happen, for a country to have a large budget deficit, it has to be a safe haven. It has to be a country people lend to. As I said, the US Treasury is the safest of safe havens, in spite of all our problems, by the way, guys. So I will borrow from Felix for year 1, and the time to pay him back, I borrow from that lady there who represents a large Japanese pension fund. And the time to pay her back, I borrow from that gentleman there who represents a large Chinese insurance company. And the next year, that the large Indian state pension fund, and so on. Keep rolling it over and over forever. And over 5% was non-sustainable, which meant that in the old days, okay, which meant that over 5%, the rest of the world would go, hey, Langdana, what are you guys doing there? You had 6.1%. The Reagan years, we were 6.3, and that was horrendous at that time. Wait till you see what's happened lately. And so, oh my gosh, no. We're not going to lend to you over 5%. We'd rather park our money at that time in West Germany or Switzerland or Singapore or Japan or some country like that. No. So that was non-sustainable. That was very dangerous because then we would have to print money like mad people. And the biggest fear would be that we would get something like this. Zimbabwe, 100 trillion. Money completely worthless, hyperinflation, nightmare scenario. You pretty much don't recover from that for a long time. So that was the fear. Well, in 2010, we went to 12%. And the sky did not fall on our heads. Sky did not fall on our heads. Nothing happened. And I'm just going to tell you in plain English. So what the heck? And you all heard my story. I was in Shanghai, Xintiandi before class when I got this number, and you're going to hear the story one more time, sorry. And somebody from the European Central Bank texted me and said, Farouk, did you know the new number's coming out? It's going to be 12%. And I went, 12? No, can't be. 6.4 was I. No, it's 12. You'll hear this on Tuesday. And I remember thinking, it's over. This is over. Why even bother going to class at 6:30? Just there's a taxi stand there in Xintiandi in Shanghai. Let me just walk out in front of the taxis. End it. What's the point of getting, I am never in almost melodramatic, over the top. I was even more over the top. And there was a Starbucks there, and you heard the story. I was thinking, okay, one last latte. This is ending. And of course, as you know, it didn't end. What happened is the capital flowed into America. When the whole planet is in trouble, this is my cave theory, capital flowed here. But in addition to the capital flowing here, we printed money. We printed more money than any country ever has. It was called quantitative easing. It's on my blog page. We printed gazillion trillion dollars, more like 35 trillion. We bought stuff, worthless bonds from hedge funds and governments and companies, and printed money. No hyperinflation. The sky didn't fall on our heads. I know June Carlin is in there somewhere. She asked me this question in an open house. Farouk, where is the inflation? Nothing happened. And what transpired is that the money we printed didn't get spent. It sat there. And Jordan from my Wednesday night class, shout out to him, described this beautifully. He said, so Professor, it just sits on the sidelines. I said, yes. I couldn't have phrased it better. It just sat there because no one was borrowing. C-bar and I-bar were low. Were you going to buy a house then? Of course not. Were companies going to borrow money even at almost 0% and build a new wind tunnel or a lab to do clinical tests or whatever? No. That's a liquidity trap. You have liquidity, but it doesn't go anywhere. So we printed money and just bailed everybody out. And I like to think of it, my analogy, as I've done last time, is it's like a snake bite. If a cobra bites you, you only die if the poison, the venom goes into your bloodstream. If it's in your thigh or some fleshy part, it's a bruise. You don't die. It has to go into your bloodstream. Do not try this at home, but you get the point, right? And so that's what happened. The money, if it doesn't get spent, if it sits there, liquidity trap, no inflation. And so here comes modern monetary theory. Please understand, there's nothing modern about it. It's not a theory. It's just a circumstantial macro thing, as I've described it. It's a set of circumstances that give you the situation where you can print money and it sits there, and now you can do green jobs. Now you can pay college tuition for everyone. Now you can do stimulus. 1.5, you know what? Let's do it 1.6. I tell you what, let's make it 1.9 trillion. the American Recovery Act policy, ARPA. Oh, let's go 1.9. Oh, Mr. President, that's huge. No, that's just the warm-up act. There's another infrastructure spending. Let's do 2 trillion. How? Even, by the way, even if we tax the corporations to the hilt and tax the super richies, that kind of tax money is never coming in. It's going to be MMT. We're going to be printing it. So this modern monetary theory, which Alessandra Ocasio-Cortez was pushing, which Bernie Sanders was pushing, which, by the way, Trump was using, he didn't call it anything in the COVID spending. That's what, the whole warp speed thing, that's how it was funded. Come on. So that's modern monetary theory. It's a key component. It is there. We are printing more money. As long as it sits there, as long as we have the circumstantial situation where confidence is low and no one's spending it, inflation is going to be in check. But the third reason, which some of us are worrying about, is that the smart money is thinking, okay, that liquidity is sitting there. You guys tell me, what happens if suddenly confidence increases? You get your second shot. You know how you feel, right? After your second shot, you recover from it and you feel like you're the master of the universe. You feel like, oh man, I'm going out. I'm going to eat out. I'm going to hang out. I'm going to go to malls, whatever. What would happen if confidence would suddenly surge?
There'll be a tidal wave of money flowing into the economy.
Yes, and what might that do?
Increase prices.
Yeah, so here we are, thank you. So here we are, folks. So reason number 3 is that MMT, reason number 3, so is a deficit. So we are deficit, by the way, the good news, let me write this down. So deficit non-sustainability, actually pushes up inflation. Or modern monetary theory vanishes. Maybe change it to becomes less effective, whatever, but you know what I'm saying. So that's reason number 3, folks. This is a big one because a lot is riding on this. So this is going to be a real interesting timing match. We want this baby to hold. It's not a theory. It's a circumstantial thing. You're printing money and you're hoping that that baby just sits there. Remember, we can print money. It's the most bizarre thing. Money is not tied to gold. No country's money is tied to any precious metal since 1971. The only thing that gives the dollar its value is the strength of our country's institutions. And our institutions have held, just barely, but they held. The Fed held. The Supreme Court held. Even though he appointed the Chief Justices, Supreme Court Justices, they held. We were against the corner, we survived. Our institutions held. And I went, phew, we need this. We lose the safe haven, no MMT. We're done for. It's a game over. So that's reason 3. And there is a 4th one. So the four pressures causing pi e to go up. So the smart money here is wondering, you know what? The confidence is going up, euphoria, pent-up demand. There's like something like 31 trillion in savings. People have been saving last year. Is that going to all be spent? We're not sure, But if it is, I'm worried about this deficit overhang. The 4th one is hot capital inflow. It's another reason. And so global capital is flooding in here again. For a while, there was all this sense misplaced. Oh yeah, America, maybe not the center for where capital is flowing. Yeah, they've lost their mojo. Sorry, no such luck. Capital is pouring in here. Hot capital inflow comes in for 2 reasons, So hot capital inflow comes into a safe haven country when domestic rates are higher, interest rates are higher, which they will be if we start overheating. So we'll be bringing in more interest. Long-term rates are going up, so it's going to be bringing in more capital higher. But the more and more important reason for hot capital inflow is higher expected long-term growth. When a country is expected to grow, global hot capital floods in. Like capital flooded into Southeast Asia in the 90s. So interest rates at home do not necessarily have to be higher. If the expectation, remember, everything is an expectation. Everyone's looking forward. They're seeing ILT, long-term rates going up here, and they're thinking, okay, that's somewhat due to cost push, but in America's case, most of that is due to the green part. Maybe the red part, but I don't think so, the green part. And to be honest, the red part overheating is still a long shot. I may be wrong here, folks, but it's still a long shot, because to go into that red part for America in the near future, keep in mind the participation rate. Don't look at the unemployment rate. It's U3. The key is the participation rate. So what you have in most countries is, here's the population, and here is the part, the civilian labor force, part of the population. From this percentage of this is the unemployment rate. So what's happened in America is the civilian labor force has shrunk. Many people have stayed out of looking for jobs, and that's called the participation rate. It's at 61.5% last month in March. For you, this is as low as 1974 when we had stagflation. So the participation rate is very low right now in America, and in actually many of our countries, because people are sitting out. They're just not looking for work. They've given up. They're not part of the labor force. So we need that to go up. So there's a lot of slack left. For women, the participation rate in America is at its 30-year low last year. Very low. So there's a lot of slack in the economy, people coming back to work. And there's a lot of excess capacity too. And capital I, your companies, wherever they are globally, are still sitting on cash. Even though there's all this talk of growth, there's also talk of tax increases. So they are sitting, they're not doing much right now, and we need them to light up. In China, I is part of G, so it's G and I are combined. It's called fixed asset spending. But this baby, liquidity trap in America, your private companies are still sitting on cash. So there's a lot of slack left. It's not scary. And one more comment I want to make here is that for all the people who are worried about overheating, when you talk of G minus T, so government spending is going to go way up. We'll do the Biden plan. But people forget that this T, that there are two moving parts in here. T is tax revenues, which is dollars, which is equal to tax rates times Y. And that's a percentage, and this is national income. So if it's say 30%, this is 100. And so tax revenues, so that's the dollar amount, $30. So there are two moving parts here. People are just forecasting, gee, oh yeah, if Biden spends this much and that much, deficit's going to be 12%, 20%. No, tax base goes up too, guys. The tax revenues go up too. As Y goes up, as national income goes up, the tax revenues will go up too. So it will offset the deficit somehow, or to some extent. But now if Biden increases tax rates a lot, and if he doesn't do it carefully, he may contract the economy. If he has to do it, just take the deductions out. Take it back to where it was before Trump. Hit the super rich with taxes. It's not going to change anything. The super rich are not going to change their consumption if you increase taxes back to where they were before Trump. They're not going to stop buying truffles from France for their omelets. They're not going to say, you know, family meeting, no more truffles from the Perigord region because our tax rates are, no, it's not going to happen. So, but there you are.
I got a quick question. It's
Yeah.
Raghu.
Hi, Raghu. Hi.
Hey, how are you, Fred?
Good,
Thanks.
man.
On the reason 3, G minus T deficit, right? One of the reasons for the inflation. Do you think what's happening right now is to, you know, cover the deficit is printing the money or bond financing? If it is done by the bond financing, do you still see the inflation that you're talking about? Like,
Yeah.
what do you see right now?
Thank you, Raghu. So just if you can see me here, this is the amount of G minus T. Okay.
Right.
So we are bond financing, and bond financing is going great. The bonds are being sold heavily.
Right.
That's that much. But there's a big gap. So we are printing, and the gap's going to be bigger. So more, we need M.
You're saying that we're printing more than the actual financing. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. So there's not enough tax revenue to cover the G minus T. So G minus T is greater than 0, basically. So
why would they do that? Why would they not issue the bonds more when you're still being a safe haven?
You know what? So that's another thing, because if the interest rates rise, Raghu, we will suddenly find that our borrowing costs, you know, if ILT goes up, our borrowing costs will hit us in the face. We have been so lucky in that the borrowing costs have been historically so low that someone somewhere is going, okay, guys, you know, it's going to be less risky and cheaper to just print money, because if these bonds rates start going up, we're going to be wiped out and we cannot default on any of our bonds.
Oh, because we're still in a growth state. We can't afford to increase the, okay,
yeah.
got it. All right, I mean,
okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
We are lucky so far. The borrowing costs have really favored us. Okay, so
hey, Professor, I have a quick question.
Yeah, hey, Mike.
Mike Haas from MBA
Yes,
2019. Thanks for hosting this. Just one question about when you were talking about the participation rate and unemployment, and if C-bar does increase, and with the amount of people we have out of the workforce today, and some of the things with unemployment benefits being more incentivized to stay on employment, isn't this just going to exacerbate the inflation concerns? As people start wanting to spend money, there's less supply in the market. And isn't that going to just drive price up even more and more?
Yeah, so you know what, let me put this together. So what we have here is a very, like I said, very hot potato. You know, on one hand, we will see that, yes, people are resonating that he threw. I tell you what, Mike, let me show you the Biden plan, and let's revisit this in that context.
Sounds good.
Okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Just give me a few minutes. Just want to talk about the supply side as real quick, because I'm going to come back to what Biden might be doing. So here we are. We talked about this baby. We are done now. This is the Keynesian story, PY. And here is Keynes, the Cambridge economist, who gave us this model. Biden is essentially a Keynesian. Keynesian schools are Harvard, MIT, Rutgers, New Brunswick, Princeton, deep Keynesian schools. But there's another model here. If you did your economics or your MBA or your PhD at the University of Chicago or Rochester or Minneapolis, they will not show you this. I mean, they are looking at me like now and going, Langdana, what are you doing? What are you doing? And in Mike Haas's comments, there might have been some of that. I'm thinking if you're deep clicked on Mike, and like, what are you doing? You're telling us nice people, I don't know how many of you there are, that G is good. Government spending, unremitted government spending is good. Hello, you're telling all these nice people that M printing money, so G, M is good. Look at all the M we printed. Did we go from Y0 to Y1? No. So it's Angela Merkel, the old European Central Bank, Chicago, they will not teach this model. If they were here, they would have walked out. If I did this at Chicago University people would come in here and turn off my laptop. You know, suddenly the screen would go there. Professor Langdana has gone away, will not be seen for a while. This is their model. Aggregate supply, Y0, aggregate demand, P0. This is Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, Angela Merkel, and we will see. I'm going to say something quite shocking, and Faith is there. Faith, calm down. I'm not going to talk about Reaganomics too much, but you will see at the end of the day today, Biden might interestingly be very similar to Reagan in several aspects. This is my personal opinion. So hang in there. This is a preview of what's coming. So this is the world of Chicago, Milton Friedman. And you will see in this world here, if you did government spending, large money supply and government spending, this is the old European Central Bank. So if you did G and M in this world here, you only get inflation. So there is no multiplier effect. There's no increase in Y, only more inflation. So these guys believe like, Biden, what are you doing? These are the guys who are freaking out. Biden, stop throwing M around. What's all this massive infrastructure? You shouldn't be doing infrastructure in innovation. Let the market decide which innovations to do. It's not the government's role. What are you doing throwing M around? Where is all this G coming from? You know, where is this? Why stimulus payments? People getting $100,000 are just playing with this money and pushing up the bubbles. They're doing GameStop with your money. They are doing Discovery. They are buying Teslas. Don't even mention Teslas to me, by the way. You know, Chris, Cliff, I know you love your car. So here we are. Here we go. These guys don't believe in G or M. They said only causes inflation, no change in Y, no change in output. And so this group believes that the only way, and please note, in many ways, Modi in India is trying a version of this, and I'm going to show you that. This group believes that moving the aggregate demand, the Keynesian model, is useless. You only get inflation. So what's the only way that you can get output here? Could it go up? Which
Innovation.
Curve? Yeah, but which curve would you move, John?
You have to move the aggregate supply.
Thank you. Is that Tintera?
Yep.
Up, could recognize that voice out of all these hundreds. So here we are, aggregate supply. Move the aggregate supply to the right. That's how you do it. And you're called a supply sider. So this is supply side economics, and you do this by increasing productivity. Increasing innovation in the economy. And you do that by lower regulation. Less government regulation, lower taxes, business taxes, corporate taxes. So you unleash the economy. Modi is trying that now. He's saying the government, the business of government should not be business. He's got these catchy slogans. And so, and again, these are all hot potatoes. The moment I say this, people jump all over me, as they should. Yeah, Farokh, decrease regulation. Does the subprime crisis sound familiar to you? You want to decrease regulation on all those suits who ripped us off? Hello? You gotta watch them like hawks, bunch of crooks, what they did in the subprime crisis. And others will say, Reagan, look at Trump, all the regulation. He goes, well, we're not talking of destroying all the regulation here, folks, just intrusive regulation. I'm not saying start drilling oil wells in our national parks, big mine and Yosemite, Arctic here, pipelines there. We are not talking unfettered deregulation. We're talking of removing intrusive government regulation. So it's, again, where do you draw the line? So productivity, innovation, that's what they believe in. So not GNM. And they're frowning and they're lying awake at night thinking, why? All this M, oh my gosh, they're running around with their checks. They're playing investing in GameStop. And these guys are saying, you guys haven't seen the dark side. Maybe you guys don't realize that sometimes you do need a helping hand, that there is a dark side. And no, some of us are managing to pay our rent, putting food on the table. Kids are not going hungry. So we don't even care about GameStop. No, we're not running around buying Teslas. So Just wanted to get the two models out. Okay, now let's look at the Biden plan. But at this point, any questions, folks, about anything? Any comments?
Yes, hi. This is Jeff.
Yeah.
Hi,
Jeff.
Farouk.
Hi, man. How are you?
What I believe the supply side is missing is that big government sets the stage for the private enterprise to enable to be innovators.
Wow. Jeff, I couldn't have put it better. Okay, thank you. Huge comment. So there's a sense, you know what? Let me put the Biden plan on, but there's a sense that this is not happening. Sorry, when I erase it, that the move to the right is not happening. Maybe Uncle Sam needs to kind of push them to the right. Your companies are sitting on cash. We gave them tax cuts. Trump did. We lowered interest rates. He cut regulation. Nothing happened. Remember, if confidence is low, that curve does not move to the right. If confidence is low, this baby here, you can do whatever you like, but for this to move, just pressing those buttons, just deregulating, giving tax cuts and saying, all right, hire more MBAs, do more innovation. Come on, invest your money in projects that might not be super safe, maybe a little adventurous and risky. Come on, take risks. No, the heck not. You're not moving. You know, against a backdrop of darkness and fear and mistrust and tension, darn right. I'm just going to pocket the tax breaks. Thank you, Mr. Trump. And I'm going to do share buybacks. I'm going to buy my own stock, push it up. Merry Christmas, Langdana. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays, which is what happened. Anyway, don't get me worked up. So.
Hi, Farouk. It's John.
Hey, John.
Question for you. Aren't we just getting to the point where there's a question about the efficiency or inefficiency of the G and or the tax cuts? Because you know, previously the view was that the government spending would be infrastructure, it would create employment, it would create efficiencies in the future economy. But now, you know, the way the G has impacted the economy lately is just nothing. It goes straight to the stock markets or to the cash reserves, and certainly some of us are benefiting from it, but it hasn't had the traditional effect of G.
Yes, and you know what? So when Keynes came up with the G, it was all infrastructure spending, and this is what I alluded to earlier, John. G is a very hot potato right now. So much of G is in very controversial things. And so the moment you mention it, suddenly you're on very thin ice. Is welfare good G or bad G? Unemployment good G or bad G? Subsidies good G or bad G? Well, some people say, oh my God, it should be in long-term productivity. Others say, yeah, it's fine for you to say that. You've never seen the dark side. You know, my whole sector has gone overseas, or my whole sector has been hammered by COVID. Hello? So let's do it. Let's look at the Biden stimulus plan. But before I go further, one thing I should have mentioned. It goes above this, I'm sorry. It's a little out of sequence. In this diagram I gave you here, just a very important reality check. I'm doing several reality checks today. That overheating story I gave you here, and P high here. This is Y max, and this is overheating. And because, you know, we are worried about it, and who knows, we may overheat. Who knows, this thing may just surge out. Economies change quickly. So, but I just want to point out, this diagram here does not look like this. And it hasn't looked like this for the last 20 years. And you're thinking, Langdana, so then why the heck did you spend the last 25, 30 minutes on that diagram? Because this, listen carefully now, this is core inflation in this story. In the old textbook overheating, this baby would be for America, 8 to 10%. The US and mature economies, emerging economies, India, China, Argentina, Brazil, 12 to 15% emerging across the board. There'll be inflation across the board. Doesn't look like that. What we have today are There's no textbook overheating. That's been such a difficult thing to handle. So what we have today is this weird world of bubbles. Inflation doesn't manifest itself in across the board. So we can have here, so this is Y moderate, and this is P, the average inflation could be P moderate. It could be 2.2%. So just somewhere in late stage 1, early stage 2, but at that point, this could be China, India, Singapore, Argentina. Even at this point, you could, in a dotted line, you could have a SAP bubble. This is housing. See, this is the complication. And so P very high. So for example, in the housing boom, this was like 2.4, but overall inflation was 2.4%, and we had the monster bubble in housing. SAP bubble, speculative asset price bubble. In China, I remember I was there with you guys, 2015 or so. We had deflation in China. It was negative out here, but we had a SAP bubble in the housing market. In the dot-com boom, the overall inflation, the core was 2.2%, but we had a dot-com bubble. So overheating has become very, very hard to manage. It's a reality check. So those nice diagrams I drew for you, it helps explain economy-wide overheating, but the reality is it's not a business cycle anymore. It's a bubble cycle. We go from bubble to bubble to bubble. So it's very hard. It's asymmetric overheating. I call it asymmetric overheating. So then you're looking at the whole house, the economy, it looks fine, but one room is on fire. Dot-coms, SPACs today, minerals today, S&P 500, who knows? So that's what makes it very hard. Now, having said this, guys, one wonders if this broad-based spending, which we are about to look at by Biden, might give us another textbook conventional core inflation overheating. We are not sure. If anything can, maybe this can, because it's broad-based. It's jaw-dropping. It's stupendously large. So there you are, another reality check that this is what the reality looks like. And these are very hard to calm down. Here you could do a soft landing here. What even China, which has supposedly more control over housing or developing infrastructure, has been unable to control runaway SAP bubbles. Beijing is telling, Shanghai is telling another neighboring city to, no, don't build another international airport. Beijing is telling Tianjin, hey, you don't need an international airport. We have one here. Stop it. Enough. And we are watching you. Satellites are showing that you're still building it. Stop it. But even Beijing can't do it. So there you go. All right. The Biden plan. And will it overheat the planet? And what this man's all about. So I have a 3-step plan. This is my version of it. Look at the canvas. So here we go. The Biden stimulus. And those comments, the last 2 comments were just right where the action is. 3 parts. This is the Langdana version. So if you don't buy this, if it doesn't pan out, well, that's my fault. It's my analysis of it. Step 1. It's C-bar restoration. And it's ARPA, the American Recovery Plan Act. Basically, this is 1.7, 1.9. What's the latest number here? 1.9 trillion. So 1.9 trillion in increase in M. So this one is, remember, I told you about the cost push inflation, P and Y. There is no cure for it, folks. Cost push inflation, the COVID shock, it's still here. And all our countries have had K-shaped recoveries, right? One leg of the K, people are doing well, working from home, fine. Other leg going down, people who were facing customers, the traditional ones, airlines, hotel, tourism, transportation, hammered, and many of them in real trouble. And so the first step is helping, healthcare, housing, single child cost, $3,000 per kid or $3,600 per kid. So basically infusing, restoring C-bar, the checks in the mail, $1,600, $1,400 checks. So C-bar restoration, bringing confidence up, very controversial. The other side have been saying, what the heck, they're going to be going in the stock market. They're going to be pushing up the SAP bubbles. The other side says, no, guys, if you've been there on the downward slope of the K, it's been a nightmare. We lie awake at night. More children are going hungry in America than ever before, by the way, and I'm sure in all our countries. And some of the poorer countries are falling heavily behind, and sadly, they can't do this. You see, we have this incredible prerogative of printing money and getting away with it. That's the huge thing the United States can do. China is flush with cash. Singapore is rich, but other countries who are not are going to fall behind, because the first thing to do is COVID shock remediation. So C-bar restoration is the American Recovery Plan Act, 1.9 trillion in transfer payments, basically cash. Part 2 has 3 parts. Part 2A is the care plan. Here we are, folks. So this is part 2, basically is increase in G funded by M. We are basically printing money, guys. I know, if I was in class with you 15 years ago, if I could move back in time and look at this, we would be going, are they mad? Haven't they looked at chapter 6? I don't even think the book was out then. I don't know. It's like a macroeconomic twilight zone. It's kind of scary, but what else can one do? So the care plan, this is like 400 billion a year at least from going now into the future. These are healthcare jobs, a large bulk. This is very important to Biden. It's one of his pillars. These are internal jobs, long-term healthcare for the elderly, jobs that are reasonably good, jobs that cannot be outsourced. Huge chunk of the employment, hoping the participation rate goes up in that, hoping women come back into the labor force in that. So the care plan, care jobs. Massive, massive focus on this. The second part of part B is retrofitting. So this is infrastructure as we know it. So this is roads, bridges, electric charging stations, infrastructure grid, power grid, education. And again, this is controversial. By the way, I just read a study from somebody published at Wall Street Journal or Economist magazine pointing out that, our roads aren't really that bad. We keep complaining about roads in the United States. There are bridges and roads that are not that bad. Big mathematical, statistical thing. And my only response was, are you in New Jersey? Which part of America are you talking about? Have you taken New Jersey Transit? Hello? This whole thing goes into the trash. What are you talking about? Those trains break down 3 times a week. Anyway, there's a big analysis. Wall Street Journal, I don't know. I don't need an analysis. I can look out the window. We need help. And I'm a civil engineer. I go over a bridge, I close my eyes. And, I'm trying not to think of all the design issues and the maintenance. Anyway, don't get me worked up. So retrofit.
Farouk, this is Doug.
Hey, Doug.
I live in the water industry right now, and When you look at the
water supply, right?
Yep, you look at the grades from the American Society of Civil Engineer on infrastructure and water, and it's a D- at best. D+.
Lead removal, of course, remediation.
All of it. I mean, what the biggest thing we have to start really being concerned about, and I'll mute after this, is it's going to affect our international competitiveness eventually. It's catching up with us.
Absolutely. So this is very real and it's long overdue. And, thank you, Doug. And great hearing from you. And the thing is, sadly, guys, Obama 1.0 could have been this. Obama's time was perfect. He was charismatic. He was brilliant. And as a student of history, this country always has had a great precedent right when this country's back was against the wall. His timing was perfect. I remember thinking, oh my gosh, this is like Lincoln, JFK, Reagan, the timing, all Washington, every time this happened. He had it all. If Obama 1.0 had worked, if he hadn't given the money away to the states, anyway, water under the bridge, pun intended, and the states, Mr. Biden, do not give it away to the states. Mr. Biden, some states in the United States are run really, really well, like Singapore. Some states, sadly, quite a few in the United States, are run like North Korea, very, very badly. Please don't give it away to the states. You make the call. You got some really smart people working for you this time. Okay. It'll eventually reach him. See, this is the interesting one, folks. Strategic. This is what I think some of the last two speakers were talking. Strategic government spending on key upstream R&D. So here we go. So this is on innovation to be a catalyst for innovation. There we go. Very controversial, but huge element. So basically, there is an electricity plan. What's it called? Clean electricity plan, I think, for that in 2035. 2030, it's called a clean electricity bill or something. All government institutions will be, the carbon footprint will be gone, will be moved to electric vehicles. And for us, non-government, by 2050, we will do that. So here's a deadline. And this is supposed to generate a huge amount of research in nuclear, solar, wind, alternate energy. So very ambitious. That part is a big part of it. Investing in electric cars, investing in battery technology, trying to do upstream research, because there's a sense that venture capitalists, the smart money, will only fund products and innovations that are more downstream. Venture capitalists kind of need to see the product almost ready. You don't show them an equation on a piece of paper and tell them, look at this large molecule, man. Check it out. Wait, let me unroll it. It's huge, large molecule. Check it out. No. Or, whoa, man, check out this math. You know what this means for product? No. So they want to see the product. And so Uncle Sam funds that. National Science Foundation research, upstream research. Very controversial because there's a whole bunch of information and research out there that says, don't do it. It's not the government's job to decide what the strategic sectors are. Don't do it. Look at the .com. Look at the communications explosion. We paid for fiber optic cable all over the planet because the smart money said, let's fund it. The smart money said, let's not fund the Concorde. And of course, the government funded it. The Concorde failed. We went for the space shuttle. We shouldn't have given up domestic launch disposable satellites. That failed. Japan spent tons of money on strategic investing in biotechnology and in the movie industry. That failed. China on solar cells actually pumped money, government's money to be the champion. They thought that was a champion industry. Failed. California, high-speed rail on the West Coast, tons of money was put into it. It never happened. So the critics, and if you could please mute your microphones, please, everyone. The people who are concerned are worrying that it shouldn't be Uncle Sam's job to pick champion industries. It's so dangerous. Some of these are going to not work. But the response is, I agree, actually. Some of these will fall on their faces. We will burn millions or billions of dollars. Some will fail, some will work. The thing is, capital investment is not happening. People aren't moving yet. So Uncle Sam has to get in. At least that's what Biden feels. And be a catalyst for your companies to jump in later on. And so the goal for this,
quick comment, Farooq, if I can. This is Ravi Maglev from 2008 class. So I feel that at least in 5G, Farooq, and I work for a large wireless company based in New Jersey. So if United States really wants to be competitive in the 5G fourth industrial revolution and compete with China, and we believe that we are really behind, the federal government should do something and invest seriously in 5G, Farooq. That's coming from seriously from large wireless corporations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ravi. So do you know, have you looked at the Biden plan for 5G? I'm thinking there is a lot there for 5G, right? If I remember.
I haven't seen the breakdown completely, Farooq, but the industry feels that they're spending billions by buying spectrum and all of the investment made. But the question being asked in the board is, when do I recoup that kind of money, right? So, and this is being pitched as broadband for the USA, middle of nowhere, villages kind of thing. That's not my responsibility, right? It's like if you go back to Roti Kapda or Makan, right? That's a government's job. So infrastructure is being looked at as a basic 101, not as a P&L of a company's balance sheet.
I see. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Farooq, it's Patrick.
Hey, Patrick, how are you?
So the point I wanted to make is if you look at the COVID vaccine, the first company that put a vaccine on the market took no government money. All the company funded by huge grants or by US government were behind or failed.
Exactly, you know, and it's a hot potato, Patrick. I know. The thing is, we have to get capital investment moving again. And you said it's happened in the vaccines. And yeah, in spite of, so what you're saying is, what about warp speed? Was that really an inducement, or was it just window dressing for the public, Patrick?
Well, it was not a window dressing, but what we could see is that the government involvement, especially people who had no knowledge about vaccine development, finally they slowed down the process for many vaccine companies. Why, Pfizer took no government money and no government involvement. That's why, the process were expedited at all stages.
Well, see,
you said it earlier too. I mean, they also relaxed some of the regulatory requirements so that they could move faster and be more agile and nimble.
Yeah, so, now things like lead removal, remediation, fixing infrastructure, the private sector is not going to do that. That is a no-brainer. Uncle Sam has to do it. This is tricky ground, this is a situation where it's a game theoretic thing. Countries B, C, and D out there are heavily subsidizing 5G, or nanotechnology, artificial intelligence, whatever the latest big thing is. And so there's a sense that we have to match them. And because otherwise our private sector cannot compete with those subsidized foreign sectors. So it's almost like a game theoretic thing. The free market economy, the other side says, let the government subsidize them. If our smart money thinks we should be doing it ourselves, we will. You shouldn't get involved. So that's really a philosophical issue right now. But there's almost a pressure that if we don't get subsidies and help, as Ravi just mentioned in 5G, we can't. Even our private sector cannot compete against Chinese subsidized or foreign subsidized 5G, and they're ahead of us. Being ahead of us, I'm not worried. America typically is never ahead in the beginning. We start a little later, and I do not really ever see a competition. It's fine for the US and China and Singapore and India to be ahead in different areas. It's fine if one is ahead of the other. A rising tide really lifts all boats, no matter where we are. But anyway, let me show you what the plan is. If all goes well with stage 2, this is what you see, a productivity shift. And this is what some of you are talking about. This is supposed to increase the country's productivity. Forget the hot potatoes like subsidizing innovation and the vaccines. Education, power, water, lead removal, high-speed trains. So the whole production function moves to the right in a productivity shift. It's almost like a positive supply-side shock. And supply-siders will like this aspect. So this is like the supply-sider thing. So this is our, for the Keynesians, let's write this. This is a huge increase in productivity. And usually, by the way, it leads to an increase in innovation, because companies think, okay, now we can maybe jump in. And look what this will do, folks. If this kicks in, if step 2, B and C kick in, look at this. We'll have Y high, but what does it do to the overheating and the inflation pressure? If we can get the size of the economy, the growth rate, the high-speed growth, the maximum growth rate of the economy to increase, we're increasing the size of the pie. This is India. India is trying this too. China has been trying this too, privatizing the state-owned enterprises. India, airlines, cell phones, communication, trying to privatize agriculture, trying to privatize. What does it do to the inflation rate?
Down.
Yeah, it dampens it. So P lower. And so if Biden can pull this off, if the productivity happens, China is subsidizing, China is falling on its face in some areas, but China is way ahead in some areas. And keep in mind 5G that was mentioned. 5G is not really a technology thing, right? 5G is an infrastructure thing. 5G, correct me wrong, Ravi, it's on a 3G platform. And so 5G needs tons of devices. Every building, every street corner has devices, will have devices on it for it to happen. It's kind of pop, 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 bouncing the speed along, if I'm right, in my intuitive sense. And so it's an infrastructure thing. China can put devices everywhere, and they have. So in a way, that's good. That's not heavy lifting. We can do that, and Uncle Sam can help with that. So look at this. That might defray overheating pressure. Here we go, productivity, that's step 2. And there's one more step to the Biden plan. So step 1 was C-bar control, the cash, throwing money, 1.9 trillion. Step 2, G, care jobs, retrofitting, and strategic investing. And the second and third, hopefully getting us this productivity shift, this productivity shift to the right, hopefully, come on. Hopefully this. And other countries are trying it too. And this is going to be over 2 trillion. So this step 2 is the big thing. If you're going to a rock concert, step 1 would actually be the warm-up act. I guess step 1 would be, that would be the boy band. And step 2 would be the Rolling Stones. It's the main thing. And there is step 3. It's kind of a whimsical step 3. Can you guess what that might be? It's kind of whimsical. It's very Langdana. Can you guess? So, come on. Biden and the third step. So the first one was C-bar. C-bar up. Well, and what for you? I-bar 2, why not? Step 2 was G, funded by M, and keep in mind, funded by M. Here, it's a hint to you. And according to modern monetary theory, M has lost its mojo. Back in the day when Greenspan was running supreme, here he is, good old Greenspan. I mean, the people would lie awake at night before the central bank meeting. Chu Rongji in People's Bank of China, rockstar. Dr. Richard Hu in Singapore, rockstar. We had one Raghuram Rajan in India, but he left. So these central bankers were like major guys, rock stars. When M changed, people would lie awake and know the Fed's central bank's meeting tomorrow. What do you think? There'd be talk shows. What are they going to do? Now no one cares. Liquidity trap, lower rates, who cares? Nothing's going to happen. C bar and I bar is low. So the role of M has lost its mojo. M is a servant of G. M pays for G. So we have G funded by M, MMT. What's the third step? What does Biden need to do? What?
Does that have anything to do with tax?
Yeah. I mean, to Mr. President, even with all the taxes, you're not going to get enough. You don't need a PhD to see that. You will still need monster money. So, okay, prayer. Step 3 of the Biden plan. I told you it was going to be whimsical. He has to pray that MMT holds until the spending is over, or this baby is going to blow up in his face. So MMT is not just an interesting sideshow. MMT is the thing. So he has to pray that this baby hangs in there, that the money sits on the sidelines, doesn't get spent, that C-bar and I-bar doesn't rise too soon, because we have an issue then. So be happy with your COVID shot and your recovery, but don't be too happy and don't rush out and buy stuff, so too soon, too much.
So Farooq.
Yeah.
What happens to G minus T?
Hey, Thomas.
Right.
Sorry, what's the question?
What happens to G minus T?
Yeah, so for you,
scenario?
So in this one, Thomas, so we have G going up, right? And hopefully T is also going to go up. Remember I told you, T is TY, right, Tom? So as Y goes up, the tax base will also go up. So the deficits will grow, but you will have a dampening effect of tax revenues also growing up. And this kind of sounds like the discredited Laffer curve, actually. The tax revenues will nullify and balance the budget. I'm not saying that. It'll keep the deficit down. But Tom, in this new world, this MMT world, I'm very irresponsible. Who cares about the deficit? I can't believe I'm saying it, but at 12%, we are at 10% now. We were at 15% last year, or 16 or 14, doesn't matter. When we were at 12% in the subprime crisis, yeah, I almost walked out into traffic, as I told you. I know what you're thinking. Like, how does one sleep at night? I was happy before this Langdana lecture, and now I don't sleep at night. And my response to you is, join the club.
So my own concern, Farooq, is that MMT, you say it's not a theory, though, right? So what is, is this just going to happen? Or just MMT is going to just, we assume that's part of the basic structure of the economy?
You know what? MMT is like this story. So MMT is, I have a barbecue right against my neighbor's house. She's got a fence. I'm putting this barbecue right there, and flames are rising. I'm right against her house. And she's rushing out with her cell phone and the fire extinguisher going, Langdana, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I'm going to tell her, Miss, calm down, put your C-bar up and calm down, because today is April the 18th and the wind is going to blow this way. I just know that historically. It's a circumstantial thing. And if the wind blows this way, the house doesn't burn down. Next week, I go back again and I have a bigger barbecue. Huge Germanic sausages, ridiculously large vegetables, squash, more flames. And she rushes out and going like, Nana, I'm calling what? And I said, calm, you need to calm down. It's now April 24th. On April 24th, typically the wind blows that way. Your house won't burn down. It would only burn down if the wind blew that way. That's what this is like. You know, that's exactly MMT. You know, it's a situational thing. You're playing with fire. Hence this analogy. It's a situational story. The money is sitting there, not being spent, and you're going, hey, keep spending. And Tom, I've run out of options, as has Biden. And I'm just hoping that, you know, what I've seen with and by now your cameras can come on, I'm thinking, what I've seen with American presidents, being a student of history, is that some of them are really, really unlucky. So when they're unlucky, they're really unlucky. Poor Jimmy Carter. And when some of them are lucky, when they're lucky, they are extremely lucky. Reagan, for example, Bill Clinton. So there are no moderately lucky or unlucky American presidents. You know, you don't think of American presidents or actually most leaders and go, you know, well, he was a somewhat lucky person. Oh, she was moderately unlucky. No, you're there or you're there. And I'm hoping that Joe Biden is extremely lucky. I'm hoping that the prayers work. Joe Biden is Irish, so maybe he can get some of the Irish luck. Kathleen, if you're there, send him your 4-leaf clover. You send it to me as a bookmark, and I've still saved it from 20 years or more. Send one to Joe Biden. He needs some Irish luck. And I think if he can pull it off, it'll be good for the planet, for all our countries, because what I happen to believe is that the planet had been moving to the dark side. It had been moving towards darkness and paranoia and restlessness in so many of our countries. I'm being very careful here. But at this time, there's a movement towards hope. And without hope, nothing happens. As we saw, no deregulation, no tax cuts. They don't work if the C-bar and I-bar is not there. Without hope, nothing happens. And so Biden's thing, that first step, controversial though it is, towards hope, reconciliation, get them jobs, get them jobs. The only way people will not travel from Alaska to Washington by car and stay in a Motel 6 to climb up the Capitol is if they have jobs. I was thinking, when do they have time to climb up the walls and drive and drive? I don't have time to go from here to Washington. I've got stuff to do. I'm going to work this afternoon. Get them jobs, move towards the light. And I really think a rising tide will lift all ships. But we will know next year. Let's have another event like this time next year. And let's see
My last
what
question
happens then.
Is there any historical precedent for MMT? I mean, do we have any experience with MMT and how well it works or doesn't work?
You know what? So let's hold off. I'm going to be here for after I'm done, Tom. Okay. So, right. but let's meet next year and let's see what happens. But in the meantime, between now and next year, I hope that your C-bar and I-bar will always stay high. So thank you for being here with Rutgers Business School this morning. And I'm going to be around. Thanks, Lawrence. Oh my God, good seeing you. And Joe and Lou, my gosh, I can go on and on. So I'm going to be around here for a while. Fire your questions at me, and you can actually chat with each other and see each other. I'm thinking the bandwidth should hold. So thank you very much, folks. Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you, Prof.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you,
Professor. Thank you so much.
Well done. Well spoken.
Thank you.
And
my God,
stay
look at all
safe,
these
guys.
names.
Thank you.
The dinosaur Milos are missing you, Prof.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I should have got my Milo cup. Yep. Maybe in August I'll be there. Make sure the restaurants in Singapore are open by then.
We should be, yes. Good luck. Take care.
Thank you.
God bless.
Bye.
Thank you. And Tom, your question, whether MMT has happened, Tom. So I don't remember, I've not seen anything like this happening in the past. Going back to your question, Tom, you know, the scale of this is staggering. Just his first plan, step A, 1.9 trillion. You know how much a trillion is? And help me here with the calculations. I might be wrong, but if you took if you spent $1 million an hour, 24 hours a day, and you started spending around the time Gandhiji did his salt march, Satyagraha, 1920s or something, and you spent $1 million an hour, 24 hours a day from 1920s, you would spend $1 trillion a few years ago. I may be wrong. I've done the math several times. Hey, Bobby, I may be wrong, but that's how much $1 trillion is. It's a freaky amount of money, guys. And so we are going 1.2, I'll tell you what, let's do 1.9. Boss, nah, and the other one, the second one, let's go 2. Nice round number. I'm Irish. I will have good luck. He better have good luck. What?
Hi, Professor Langana.
Hey, go ahead.
Yes, one word that I didn't hear during your talk, I was a bit surprised, is transitory. Because if you listen to the Fed watchers and Jay Powell, it's all about, is this just a transitory effect? So curious if you're in the transitory or more permanent.
Thank you so much for saying that. You won't hear that word from me because, in some macro textbooks, you have a short-run aggregate supply curve and a long-run aggregate. No. Everything is long-run. We are all looking forward into the future. Everything is expectations, and that's actually a profound statement because, as kids, if you remember, when holidays would come, birthdays, vacations, end of school, the happiness was tied to the expectation. You executive MBAs, for 3 days, 3 weeks, 2 days, 5 hours to graduation, it's an expectation. The countdown is actually more confidence or happy inducing than the actual event. Everything's an expectation. And so when people say transitory, I'm going, no, we're going all the way. Nothing is transitory for me. Thank you for pointing that out.
Professor Langdana, Felix.
Yeah. Hey, Joe.
Question I have in regards to raising interest rate, which basically I think I would agree that's going to happen at the end. How does that at the end impact the whole housing market? And the housing boom right now. I'm surprised that during the COVID time in certain area in the country, in the US, the value of the houses increased by 10 and 15%. Is that a sign to a future bubble on this? So?
Yeah, the thing is the housing price growth is actually slowing down, but there's pent-up demand for housing. That's one thing. Then there's cost push inflation on housing too. Lumber, raw materials, copper, and people in the housing, workers. So there's a cost push effect too. And what you have is people are trying to jump ahead and buy the houses, Felix, before the rates go up. Mortgage rates have risen in the last few weeks, and they're poised to rise some more because of the ILT. So what you're seeing is an accelerated effect in the housing market as people are jumping in, trying to get ahead of the curve with lower interest rates. And
I can see that. The second question is, good portion of the house price is the land price at the end. So the building the house itself in East Coast and West Coast is only relatively a small percentage of it at the end. But won't higher interest rates at the end push the house prices down because people long term won't be able to afford to take these big, huge, crazy loans out?
Yeah, so you have often when the interest rates are high and the demand for housing falls off, so you're going in with hopefully an adjustable rate. Maybe in America, we can refinance. So if you go in with a higher rate, but the price might come down. See, at that point, when the interest rates are high, you're going to have the overall demand less. So you might be paying less for your house, but you got a high mortgage rate. Hopefully, as the economy goes into a soft landing after the Fed raise rates, the mortgage rates will come down, and you and I, if you're in this country, you can refinance. The Canadians can't refinance. They're stuck. And I don't know if the Europeans can. I'm not sure. Australians can. I'm not sure.
Hey, Farouk, this is Hong.
Hey, Hong, how are you?
But it's always great listening to you. My question is, do you know what percentage of housing today are bought by big, let's say, hedge funds or all these funds? I mean,
No, I'm sorry. That's something I'd have to look. Somebody knows the answer, that would be great. This is something I'd have to look into.
Okay.
We actually have a real estate finance program now, last 2-3 years, and some of the executive MBAs have taken electives in that. So there is a professor called Morris Davis. He actually worked at the Fed. He is the guy who will give you the answer in a nanosecond. So I'm going to shoot an email. So send me a question in the chat, and I'll send it off to him.
Professor Mangdana, it's Carol Aloisi.
Oh, hey, Carol, how are you? From
Good, how are you?
Doing good. Carol, yeah, Carol is one of our speakers. Carol, I should have given you a shout out.
No.
Thank you from the years ago.
So if we're worried about overheating, in addition to raising interest rates on the corporate, wouldn't we also want to raise taxes on the corporations and wealthy to depress the C-bar and I-bar, however unpopular that is?
Thank you. That's a huge comment, Carol. So, and I'm actually meant to make it. So if he times this right, he shouldn't jump the gun and do taxes too soon. There's a constituency on his team that wants to beat up on the suits, and they have to understand the suits are not the bad guys all the time. The suits may have misbehaved, but they're not always the bad guys. So let the growth happen. And then if he raises taxes or takes away the deductions and the loopholes, that might be a good decelerant to prevent the overheating. So that would be one way where the unmitigated growth might be slowed down and controlled. The thing with those C-bar, with taxes, is that it tends to hit areas that are not affected by taxes. So like when Trump cut taxes, you had people in the Trump base who were not involved in the tax cut. Trump cut taxes pretty much for the mega rich. It was a welfare plan for billionaires, right? So you had people making very low incomes going, hey, tax cut. I'm going, no tax cut. No tax cut for you. Stop running around doing tax cut. You didn't get a tax cut. But there's a whole presumption that we have tax cuts, and that's what I worry about. So increasing taxes, yeah, you want to gently bring it down and prevent overheating, but you don't want it to rampage through the economy and collapse C-bar and I-bar.
One question. It's good to see you, by the way, and thank you so much for doing this. I hope you're doing well and safe. I hope you appreciate this question. What are some of the metrics that you're using in class? You used the cleaners as a metric or thermometer, if you will, in terms of the economy going better. You talked about some of the Biden plan. What are some of those early effects do you think that you're looking out for, you would recommend we look out for to see this plan actually coming into a positive effect, as you've kind of spoken about?
Thank you. He's talking about the dry cleaner index that we built, I think, in his class, to talk to dry cleaners and see how many shirts they were doing, to see how many people are interviewing for jobs. And it was a class exercise, but it took off. I mean, it was in newspapers all over the country, and people from overseas were asking about the dry cleaning index. It was just one of those things that caught fire. Of course, can't work now with COVID. That whole thing's gone. So I'm looking at things like the long-term bonds, very important. Bonds know best. Yield curve, very important. Keeping in mind that there is a twist going on, so I'm alert to that. I'm looking at the Baltic Dry Index to see what the planet is doing. So the Baltic Dry Index looks at, it's a bulk cargo ships index, the rental rate for ships carrying bulk cargo. That looks like the planet, what are the costs for renting a ship to carry copper, zinc, wood, iron ore, and to see if the planet's waking up. So those are two I look at very carefully. And then I just talk to people. I'm picking up signals all the time. Most of them are anecdotal, because as Keynes, famously, he looked out the window and he saw unemployed people there. And in the classical model at that time, there was no such thing as unemployment. He saw it outside the window and he said, okay, something's going on. By the way, the similarity with me and Keynes ends there, that great man. And so I look out the window a lot. I'm very sensitive to picking up signals. And there is a lot of pain out there, folks. So yeah, some of the step one from Biden shouldn't have gone to some people, but by and large, there's a lot of pain, and especially when the kids are at home and you have parents who have to actually now work with the kids and do homework, and because they have to be more involved. And if the parents are working, then suddenly now the kids now not doing well. There's more pressure, and a lot of that is happening, and that's not captured by any metric.
Hey, Farouk. Good morning.
Hey, Marty.
Hey, greetings from Las Vegas.
Thank you. Thanks for being here, Marty. So what are you seeing there? Are things waking up?
Well, so that's interestingly my question for you this morning is, do you think travel and hospitality is a leading enough indicator or big enough industry to tell whether the MMT is holding? Because I will tell you anecdotally, we are suppressing occupancy, right? Rates, occupancy, hiring is through the roof here.
Wow.
It's like is a huge hockey stick anytime that you got a stimulus check and people are flooding in and open officially June 1st without capacity limits and without social distancing. So the conventions are flooding back in, transient travel is flooding back in. And I don't know what that says to the overall picture or if it's a large enough number to be an indicator, but I will tell you, if it's a canary in the coal mine, you might have an MMT challenge.
MMT challenge, and also a COVID challenge with the aggregate supply curve getting shoved to the left as more people get the COVID again, right?
Yeah, that's a pervasive challenge we have in an area where
So, Marty, I need to connect you. In our Singapore class, we have the people who run Marina Bay Sands. So, and I've spoken there. We all do when we get to Singapore. So shoot me an email and I'll connect you to the manager there. He's there. 2-3 of them, they are our students from the Singapore program, and you should compare notes.
Absolutely.
Thank you. But yeah, it's like a corner solution. The ones who have high C-bar just are burning that money, the pent-up demand. And I'm not sure if what's happened in Vegas and Atlantic City is a good proxy for the country. I'm really not sure, but I'm amazed that you guys are on fire out there.
Yeah, definitely.
Raghu.
Hey, Raghu, how are you?
Very good. Thank you for taking the time. It's a perfectly well-timing session. Really needed.
Yeah, actually, I pushed it back a couple of 3 weeks because, I was tired of people yelling at me about the Farouk again, you and that yield curve thing, Prachi there would be yelling at me again, your yield curve inversion, you're again freaking out. Nothing happens. An inverted yield curve means a recession is coming in. It's given
I just have one
signals.
question, and before I get to my question, I just wanted to make a comment on Joe's question. The metrics, the things that to look after, like to see whether it's working in a favor or not, right?
So sorry, one more, Raghu, for Joe. Participation rate, very important. So the participation rate means people are actually feeling confident going into the labor market, because if you're fed up, you're depressed, you're disgusted, it's the heck with it. I'm staying at home. And if you stay at home and if you're not looking for a job, you're not counted as unemployed, as we know. You're not a statistic. You're not an unemployment statistic. So when we see the participation rate going up, you'll actually see the unemployment rate falling, as now it's going to be a percentage of a larger slice of a larger group of people. So that's another one I look at, participation rate. And that's unambiguous. Those numbers don't lie. Sorry, go ahead, Raghu.
Yeah. So in a contradictory, right, during the Trump administration, we've seen that the less regulations and then the tax cuts in the corporate. Now, especially from the, the finance side of it, right, I've seen, you can take, we talked about the stab bubbles and then how they exploit, and then we don't know that they're next door and then they're going to exploit right next day. We don't know about it, right? But like if you look at the things that are happening last few months, not just the GameStop, that reminds us that the more regulations have to come. Even from the last 2008 financial crisis, Dodd-Frank came in and then they wanted to put some regulations to a specific, but those things are like to a large extent are not completely implemented. Right now they're talking about how to disclose the short share, which was included in the Dodd-Frank like 11 years ago, but it's not done. Now they're talking about doing it. I think one of the things to look after, Joe, your question is more and more financial regulations that are coming. You call it as regulations on the short, or less.
Yeah, but Raghu, let me just jump in here. Not
Mm.
going to work. I'm sorry. It's just so not going to work. And I can save Biden and us all a lot of pain by not going. It's not going to work. I'll tell you why. Because it violates the Nash. It violates Adam Smith.
Right.
Adam
I'm
Smith taught
not
us.
saying, Farooq, it's going to work. I do believe that it's not going to work, but I think the administration is probably forced to imply, and then it may work in a counter-intuitively, right? So if you look at the recent turmoil with
So I just want to jump in here, Raghu. Yeah, I want to just jump in here. Is that what we are talking about is that regulations by themselves will 50-foot, you put a 50-foot wall, as I'm famously like to say, somebody will invent a 51-foot ladder.
Right.
And so that's the thing. You're right, Raghu. There will be regulations. People like me will jump up and down and shout and say, you know what? You have to design incentive systems to prevent people from doing GameStop and creating SAP bubbles. Just telling them, no, we're going to punish you. You can't do that. They'll find other ways to do it. They will get
around it. The point
around
that I was trying to make was that there are more bubbles than what we have seen recently, right? People are finding, to your point, right? So the recent history with gas, they're finding ways to get more leverage. They're talking about 250, 500% just by instead of disclosing them as hedge fund versus they're disclosing as a family house, and then they're trying to get more leverage, and then there's a lot in there.
Exactly, and
it's only going to get worse and worse.
It will end when the bubbles start going, and then what happens is that generation remembers that, oh geez, and then typically if there's a massive bubble explosion, then it's the fourth generation. For the next 3 generations, they stay out of bubbles. Then the fourth generation typically comes and thinks it knows everything. Oh my God. In their time, there was no this technology. There was no this. What do they know? So every 3rd or 4th generation gets sucked into bubbles.
The same suits. They're still watching Farooq.
Yeah, and bubbles are fun. Bubbles. Everyone's a genius till the interval. Then when the bubble collapses, it becomes annoying.
Thank you. So my question was, so I have a question too, was I was hoping that you talk about it, mentioned during a session about, which is the tariffs and the whole trade war with China. So how is that going to play with everything that we talked about it?
Oh, the thing is, the bottom line is I'm not worried because China is still 65% of Chinese reserves are still in the US currency, US dollars, and China is not stupid. So deep down, we're going to be fine as long as they know that, we know. Not sure we know that, but they know that. The tariff war is insane. It hurts them, it hurts us. We subsidize the agricultural sector with our tax revenues. Trump did, So it's this point. Nothing good came out of it. And the numbers are coming out. Nothing was prevented. Overall, no employment really was gained. We got hurt and they actually got hurt. They are paying more. That's what I said. Actually, did talk about it briefly, that both countries need to walk away. They're both spending inordinately more on defense when they could be spending that on their economy. Same thing with India and China. Walk away, it'll be a win-win. But what happens is when things are under shock, when countries don't do well, governments tend to find an opposing country or an enemy or a bad guy to distract attention. That's always been the case in history. So now I'm hoping if there's growth, there'll be no less reason to do that. It just makes sense. But it's going to be hard to do because all our leaders have painted themselves in these corners. So now how do you get out of the corner after you've been beating up on the Chinese or the Indians or the Americans or the whomever and say, you know what, let's do trade. You know what, we're going to pull down our tariffs. But yeah.
Thanks very much. Is China still pegging the currency to US?
No, it's not. No, absolutely not. No, it's completely gone for years, So all these guys who are talking about currency manipulation, that's like an 8-9-year-old story. It's endogenous. But countries manage it. But in terms of pegging it under, what you're talking of is artificially keeping it weak? No, that's gone. It was costing them too much. Yeah. Hey, Gopal.
Hi, Farooq. Hi, how are you? It's a great session. So thank you for this. It was very well timed. This brings back memories. It looks like old times. I do have a question for you today, Farooq. I think we talked a lot and it was very enlightening, and some of these concepts just brings back. But I didn't hear a contagion effect. I mean, we talk a lot about what Biden's plans are, but then economies like large economies like India is still really under pressure, and they're still recovering, and maybe they've not even seen the bottom most of the COVID impact. How is that going to impact?
Yeah, so so we talked briefly. I did the best I could, Gopal. We had talked about a two-tier recovery. So countries that have overcome COVID, and I showed you the export function as a function of Y star, right? The foreign income. I showed that right today. And so Y star for foreign country, and Y star is America's income. So when America picks up, they will send more exports to us. But that's only for countries who have gotten their supply chains working again, who have overcome COVID. So vaccine heavy, cash heavy countries, they can avail of America's growing income by exporting more to the US. But countries that have not overcome COVID, not vaccinated, supply chains still sitting at home, are going to actually be in trouble. And that's when I quoted the president of the World Bank, David Malpass, who said that there is this inequity, huge inequity in this COVID attack, between two groups of countries, and the poorer countries or countries who are lagging behind or can't afford vaccinations are going to be in bad shape. It's this. So the contagion effect, if you will, of growth will only be to countries that are trading with America and China. Those will be the big recovery engines. Look at Singapore. Singapore wasn't supposed to grow till the second quarter. Singapore has shown first quarter growth. Semiconductors, exports to America and to China, because those two economies are moving up now quickly. And Singapore was expected to be flat this year, but because it's an export country and it's coming through COVID and it's cash heavy, is expecting 6 to 8% growth this year. So it's a sad story in a way. Poor countries are going to be taking a little longer. And the poor within the poor countries are going to be in greater poverty, sadly.
Speaking of the greater poverty of the inequality when it comes to vaccine distribution, how will this inequality impact supply chain in general for these poorer countries if they are connected in some ways when it comes to macro supply chain connectivities?
So you have some examples in mind?
So let's say, I don't know, some poor countries, let's say Vietnam.
Yeah,
Vietnam hit hard by COVID. Let's say
that's a great example. Thank you. Vietnam, and I don't know if I put up the yield curve. Vietnam is going to do great, by the way. So Vietnam, what happened with Vietnam is they got the transshipment. Vietnam loves Trump. I mean, I'm seeing Trump's picture in Vietnamese living rooms. Like, people have John F. Kennedy. I'm seeing his picture. So what happened is 51-foot ladder. We put tariffs on China. So Chinese producers are moving stuff through Vietnam. And country of origin, yeah. And so now it's a Vietnam product, no tariffs. So there was a massive transshipment through Vietnam to avoid the tariffs. And Vietnam's economy surged. And so Vietnam has become a major conduit for sending goods to America. And to the extent that Vietnam has built a deep water port now, I can't remember the name, but Vietnam couldn't send things across the Pacific. They would send things to Singapore, Tanjung Pagar, I guess, and I would be looking down at the port from my hotel room, sit and watch the ships. And then they would send it across. But now Vietnam is doing so well, they have their own deep water port and they're sending stuff. So Vietnam is connected to America by this export, the Y star. They may have the COVID thing, but the Y star is so dominant that they are expected to come out of it. And they're getting richer fast. This has been the trade war has been a boon for Vietnam. But I don't know about other countries, Hong. It's a tough one, and it's a heartbreaking one because in other countries there is no end in sight, and now there are variants coming. And so countries who are donating vaccines are now cutting back. America has surplus vaccines now, but it's not giving them away because what if the variants come back faster and they're more deadly? And so it's a heartbreaker. I just don't have any, I don't think anyone has any answers.
Farokh, to that point, we had a question that shouldn't the rich countries be helping the poorer countries with COVID vaccines, how we have seen India initially distribute a large number of vaccines. However, now they have to hold back due to the growth in the infection.
Yeah, right. India sent like 1 million to Brazil and stuff. And so for a while there, thank you, Prachi, for reading that out. And I can't wait to see your chats. So there's something called vaccine diplomacy, which some countries indulged in. So this is the cynical view where you give vaccines to another country or a bunch of countries to kind of, Russia comes to mind, you know, to kind of increase your influence with these countries like, oh, look at me, we are so good. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is rich countries not giving vaccines to poorer countries. And in the United States, what's happened is it's only now that we are vaccine surplus for the last 2-3 weeks, but we were playing catch up, Prachi, for the longest time. And one reason we have a surplus, and this is again shocking, and Marty's comment comes to mind, some states, people aren't taking vaccines. You know, right when the vaccines came out, I had my buddies from IIT and from my high school in Texas who just called the family doctor and who said, yeah, come on in now. You want this afternoon. But they just came out. And I said, but didn't you jump the line? All these people older than you, did you elbow them out? Oh, how unethical that was. And they said, no. They said, you better come and take them or we have to throw them away. There's no one here. And so all of the guys in Texas got the vaccine. So some states are sitting there who are just not going for it. And so that's why we have this surplus. And I'm hoping, if I know the Biden administration, they are sensitive to hope. This is something he will do. This is something Biden would do, maybe in the next few weeks. I'm hoping, because it's so poignant and so striking that we are sitting on this surplus, millions of surplus vaccines now.
Thank you. So when you say that he will do that, are you saying that he will eventually start distributing vaccines to the needy?
Sorry, Prachi, I'm thinking he should, but I don't have any more information than anyone else. You know, but based on the tone of this government and the sensitivity of this government and the fact that, you know, that's what he is, I think we will see America giving vaccines to other countries.
Thank you.
Hey, Farokh, it's Wayne Doddridge here. How you doing?
Hey, Wayne, how are you? I said, like the new look.
Hey, well, you know, look a little more like Santa Claus every day. It's hard to believe that our little mascot that was born is now in first year of university. So it's a long time since I've seen you. I'm curious.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's great to see you again. Curious about your comments on where Australia fits in this whole thing. We've been absolutely blessed to be here with, in the last while, we've had 2 durations of greater than 100 days of COVID free. And even when we did, we had 2 and 3 day snap downs and that was it. You know, we've been partying, playing golf. People are traveling all over Australia, but it does feel that it's getting to the point here where they're going to start to eat their own young, as a figure of speech I use, in that all the JobKeeper stuff is going to start going away. You know, people have been spending money that the government was giving them. They're spending the money that they've had internally. They're shifting around between Sydney and Queensland because Queensland handled COVID better. It was an opportunity to get to the high markets of Sydney. And now you look at it and you go, well, at some point in time, this economy that thrived on Chinese students coming in, the universities are down $100 million each this year. How do you see them coming out of this whole thing? And God forbid, if it does actually hit this place and we do end up in a 3 to 6 month lockdown in Australia, could be quite impactful.
Yeah. And, you know, thank you, Wayne. And before I answer that, one thing I meant to say, which I didn't, this was a very important thing, but I have 58 people here. So I just want to make this comment. It'll be on the recording. So what Biden is trying to get here almost reminds me of the Japanese system. So the Japanese economy, when I was way back in grad school, it was a 2-tier economy where you had an export sector, very competitive, Toyota, Honda, Mitsubishi, and so on. But that was only 25% of the economy. The rest of the economy was inward looking, domestic caring. So you had healthcare, which was very strong, but then you had a lot of inefficient and huge domestic sector. Banking, not very productive. Finance, retail, agriculture, not productive. So it was actually called the corporate welfare state. That's what it was known as. And I am meant to make this comment when everybody was there, where 25% of the economy, the Toyotas, the Hondas, world competing, but the rest were domestic. And that's where the jobs were. And so the Biden plan reminds me of a Japanese two-tier corporate welfare state, actually, where you have the care jobs being those domestic inward-looking jobs, and the strategic investing being hopefully the innovation that he will come up with. So that's a comment I wanted to get out there. And Wayne, for you, if the supply shock hits you, and I can relate, my brother is in New Zealand. He's actually the head of a hospital there, and they've done drill after drill. He's in Wellington. So, he did then drill after drill after drill. Not once has there been a COVID case. He says, we have super duper masks and purifiers and air flowing from here to there, and it's tailored to me. Nothing is happening, and he's thrilled. But the thing is, if you get hit by a supply side shock, it's a body blow. You can't do much. The thing with Australia is that you have exporting of minerals, valuable minerals, and that is going to be your lifeline. So if the planet recovers, China especially, and the US, that's your export. And China cleverly has bought up some strategic minerals. More power to them. What we were distracted over the last 4 years, China has been buying lithium. 65% of the world's lithium, or 75%, is processed in China. They own only 6%, but they process, really all of it's processed in China. And you need that for the batteries. So Australia has the exports in the minerals and in high skilled labor too, but you have that. But it's just a body blow. The thing with COVID is other supply side shocks, Wayne, they're typically short term. COVID just doesn't go away. I mean, we've been now over a year, and it's taking its toll.
Yeah, well, they're scared to death of opening up here, and it's like I said, it's a pleasure to live here. But now that I'm at the end of my rope and retired and got my money, it's not so bad, but it's certainly horrific for a lot of other people. Yeah. But listen, Farouk, I really wanted to say thank you, and it was good seeing you again. It's 2 a.m. here, so I'm gonna.
Wow! Oh my gosh!
But
wow!
It was really
so
great.
Much.
And regards to everybody out there, and stay healthy and safe, everyone. Bye now.
Thank you so much for being here, Dwayne. Say hi to everyone, please. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, folks, any last questions before we call it a day? It's great seeing all these names here.
Yeah, I've got a question for you.
Hey, Cliff. How are you?
I'm doing great. So if Biden fails in his prayers, and what are the vehicles to hedge against the prospect of excessive inflation or hyperinflation that you would recommend?
Well, Cliff, this G that is being planned isn't going to be a one-shot G. So, it's not like we're spending the trillion in the very near future. This is going to be an ongoing thing. And I am seeing this as an iterative process, I'm hoping that the good thing is on his teams, pretty much all his macro policy teams, if you could turn off the microphones, please. On pretty much all his teams, Cliff, he has really smart people. And there is no political bias here. I know some of these people, I know of some of these people, they're really smart people. So he's getting good advice. And these are not extreme people in extreme Keynesians or extreme supply siders. These are people who believe in a Keynesian curve, but the focus is on productivity. Or on a supply siders who believe that good G does increase productivity for supply siders, which it does. So it's an iterative process. I don't see 2 trillion being spent right away. And the bond market will warn us long before it happens. So if the bottom is going to fall out, the bond market will be getting steeper and steeper quickly. precious metals will be very attractive. That's when we will know if cryptocurrency has got what it takes, you know. So that's when we will know what it's made out of. So will people go to it, or will people go to the dollar or cities or precious metals? It'll be interesting at that point in time.
One other aspect to talk about or address. Do you have any concerns from the point of view of all of our diagrams and everything in terms of the consistent rising costs of healthcare, where it's now approaching 20% of our GDP?
Yeah, so that's been a concern because Biden has thrown so much money at healthcare, at the care jobs. And so there's one school of thought actually out there, Cliff, and Cliff is a dentist, by the way. And so one school of thought says, man, there's already inflation, like ridiculous inflation, and now you're going to throw more money at them and make inflation worse? Maybe not. Maybe if the size of the pie actually increases, then remember what the diagram I had for you? That would actually tamper or dampen the inflation rate. So if you can increase productivity in healthcare, remember, the more care jobs, the more elderly long-term care jobs, if they can be taken care of at home, Cliff, that was the whole plan, right? That fewer of them take up hospital beds, because we have this mini MBA, and Bobby's taught in it, where in these hospitals, St. Peter's and so on, where we find that in the teaching there, that almost 10%, sorry, something like 70% or 80% of healthcare costs come from 10% of the population, people who are going to hospital over and over again and not taking the medicine. And so if we can cut back on that, those repeat customers, by having extensive nursing, better in-house care at home, that might actually decrease healthcare. And this Biden's thing is a macroeconomic Hail Mary pass. I know it, you know it, we all can see it. He's throwing the ball as far as he can, and he's hoping someone's going to catch it. And at this point in time, Cliff, what options are there? The only thing dramatically different about Biden's thing is it's the scale, the staggering scale of his G. That's the unique thing about his plan.
One option is to change the reimbursement system so that people aren't incentivized to do more procedures and more expensive procedures.
But I thought, Cliff, we were going to tackle that, or had tackled that, where they were paid by result and not by procedure. So as if the result wasn't fixed, or the result was fixed, then you couldn't do procedures over and over again. I remember this was a big issue years ago. It's still an issue, because I've not been in the loop. It's still an issue?
Sorry?
It's still an issue today, but Bobby, this hasn't been fixed?
It is an issue, and there is lots of discussion in healthcare now of changing to outcome-based reimbursement, but that'll take a while because there's lots of resistance.
We got Dolly too. They've got all kinds of people to get feedback opinions from.
Yeah, Farooq, I had a comment to make on that. We were going to move towards value-based purchasing, what it's called.
Value, that's right.
Get paid on outcomes. And the thing is, we have only been able to move to a small extent of value-based purchasing for the facilities, hospital systems only. Where as far as providers are concerned, physicians, their reimbursement is not aligned. So till we don't align everybody's reimbursement to the value-based purchasing model, nothing's going to change.
Wow. So we're still a long way off.
Yes.
Thank you. Bobby, you're seeing that too? Yeah, thank you. So sorry, Cliff. This is going to be an issue. Any other questions,
Professor?
Folks?
Yes. This is Jay from your part-time class.
Jay,
great to see you again.
Long time no see. You went class on Wednesday.
I know, one class. So just to add to that, so in 2011, federal government adopted, the Meaningful Use Program to cut down, to have better metrics for reimbursement. But unfortunately, there were so many vendors, private vendors, healthcare IT companies that came into the mix that healthcare systems were not talking to your doctor's office. So there was a big influx of dollars, but it really didn't translate to better outcomes because it was just too fragmented. And I think it's going to take a long time to fix.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. And, so when I used to teach in the mini MBA in healthcare, the thing I kept getting was the productivity is so low because there's so much duplication, there's so much fragmentation, and there is so much not sharing of information because of proprietary reasons. And the doctors say, we don't know how to fix this. It's just such an inherent problem. And it sounds like it's still there.
Yes, it is. Yep. I think, in England, they have the National Health NHS, and everybody is on the same platform in terms of technology. But here in the US and possibly other countries as well, it's just there's too many players to have one system that fits all.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jay. I'll see you on Wednesday for our last class. Yeah.
Sarah's been waiting for quite some time. If we could get
Oh
her
my
in.
gosh, sorry, I'm not seeing the hand. Sarah, where are you? Oh, there you are. Hey, Sarah. Good, good.
To see you again.
That's right. Are you like the mayor of Bridgewater now or Summit? Or?
I'm actually a commissioner for Somerset County. So we've got 21 municipalities that we're trying to keep monitoring. And a lot of what you're saying, what's going on the federal level, we are seeing on the local as well and state. And as you're saying, people, as soon as they receive their second vaccine, they feel like they're invincible, that they can go back out. And on the local side, we are getting quite a bit of criticism, as you could probably imagine, saying, reopen right away. Do you recommend us still trying to keep a certain level of, capacity regulation and everything to slow that down to be in alignment?
I'm just trying to look at the doctors and see what signal they're giving me. Bobby, give me a yay or a nay. Help me out here. This thing has to be broken. We have to, in Singapore, they call this a circuit breaker, where they broke the change of the transmission. And sure, I want to be out there too. Of course, mine isn't as exuberant as, the Las Vegas story. I want to go to the public library, for example. That's Langdana's. A wild evening for Langdana is going to the public library and sitting down in a corner and looking at books. That's my wild evening. So, but I have to say no, we have to break this transmission. How long can this go on? We have these waves coming and coming, and that's all I can tell you, but you're in a position where you got businesses who are dying and clamoring. My pain is not that much, but it is there. We have executive MBAs going for, oh, can we please come face to face? And this is crazy. We are not networking. We are not getting the benefit of this program. So I'm seeing it too. And Rutgers, interestingly, is going face to face in the fall. We are mandating vaccinations. Everybody needs to get their shots. And already there are murmurings and ripplings, they cannot force us. And studies have shown, and I'm going, oh, geez, here we go. So Ember, our team here is planning for face-to-face, which is what Rutgers has mandated, then all online. And then we are planning a hybrid model where the students come in the morning face-to-face, but we don't feed them. They go home for lunch. And then in the afternoon at 3:30, we go online, virtual. So it's a hybrid model. This way there is no wiping down the tables and feeding issues. And yeah, I just don't know what to tell you. My instinct would be to just break this transmission just for a few weeks so we can get this thing down. But again, it's the game theoretic thing. We can do it, but if there's 2-3 other states down south or wherever don't, we left the back door open, and here we go. Bobby, would you agree?
Yeah, I kind of feel that I'd like to get out like everyone else feels. We all have our vaccine freedom now, and we want to get out, but I'm afraid of the unknown, of the variants, of the people that haven't been vaccinated. And are we going to have a resurgence like we've seen in Maine or in Minnesota or whatever? And that's the real problem. That's the hesitancy.
Yeah, we're already up to 20 variants in Somerset County alone.
My God.
And but interestingly enough, when we did our budget report last Tuesday, we saw our ratables were actually up 2.4%, which we haven't seen in over a decade. So on the ratable side, we're trending very positively.
Wow, that's good. So listen, before we go to, I'm going to Mike Haas, he's got his hang up, but we need you to help Rutgers Business School since you're a big political muckety muck there. So we need to talk programs there in Bedminster or wherever you are. Where are
Let
you?
me know what we can work on together.
Yeah, okay, sounds great. Mike, sorry, I saw your hand up.
Oh, no worries. Thank you again, Professor, for holding this, and Sarah, as a person who lives in Somerset County, thank you for all you do.
Exactly, thank you.
Professor, so this is something that usually somebody asks, so I feel obligated to ask. For you, where would you advise us to stash our money during these uncertain times? And sorry, that's my daughter in the background.
Oh, no, not at all. And that's right. Didn't you get married while we were in class?
I did. Right after I finished class, I got married and we welcomed my daughter into the world in June.
There you go. Langdana remembers everything. That's mind is like a steel trap. So to answer your question, look, I'm older than you, Mike, obviously. So, and I've seen bubbles. I've been through bubbles in real estate, and it's a depressing thing. Having said that, if the market does correct, the market is overvalued now, I happen to think. If it does correct and comes down to a more believable level, I might jump in S&P 500, nothing crazy, and ride this baby up. Because whichever way you look at it, that darn aggregate supply curve is moving to the right, in the green. And Langdana's going to, hey, it's high time I rode the gravy train. So I'm going to actually ride this baby up for a while till my long bonds tell me something weird is coming, or mortgage rates. If they're playing around with twist, I'll figure that out. But I might pop into S&P 500, nice and stable. After the correction, yeah. And again, God forbid this blows up, Mike, don't come yelling at me, okay? This is...
And it's funny, that's the first time you mentioned the S&P. It was always in the bonds or somebody commented.
There you go.
Mattress.
See, I'm flexible. I know a good thing when I see one. Okay. Anything else, folks?
Just one question. Okay, someone else.
Hey,
all right, sorry for jumping in. Do you have any percentage of a portfolio in cryptocurrency?
Oh my God. Hong, no. That's a very short answer. No. And you know what? It doesn't mean too much because Hong, I'm the only, I've said this before and you guys are rolling your eyes. I'm the only Indian you will meet who's an engineer who is not a technology guy. So I'll make more money if there was a museum where they put me and people paid money to look, check that out. He's an engineer from IIT, no technology. I write with a fountain pen. I read history books. So you know what? So it's not my world. That's why I was pulling Cliff's leg about the Tesla. It's just not my world. But the thing is, that's the currency, that's base. Its strength is the anonymity. That's its strength. And the strength is the constant ledgering process. The technology behind it is amazing, but its strength is anonymity. The greenback treasuries, the strength is obviously not gold. The strength of that is the institutions, which held. They actually held. Even Trump's appointed chief justices didn't give him what he wanted, contrary to what we all thought. They actually held. You know, the core meltdown was seconds away from happening, and this country held. And so, yeah, I'm a believer in that and not the crypto stuff because I may not understand it, but I'm just not buying it. Sorry. But again, keep in mind, that's Langdana, who writes with a fountain pen.
Hello, this is Sunil Vimalavansan.
Oh my God. Hey, Sunil.
Hey, good. I'm actually responding to Sarah's comment. I'm from the next county, Middlesex. Globally, if you look at what happened the last year, the summer is going to be the savior to flatten the curve, prevent these so-called peaks. And that also, given data shows that the so-called mutants will have very little effects on these peaks. I think they're all overblown. There are more than 4,000 mutants now. And it's going to go ahead. It's a large number. I don't think it's really, based on the data, it's really will make a big difference for outcome, clinical outcomes, and in that case, the economy in the longer term. But summer is the savior going to be, as happened in UK last year. The incidence rates went down to 95% from the winter time. But again, when the winter came in October, November, December, it went through the roofs. So I think to be patient, and when you open up the county, for example, as she said, I would rather be taken stepwise and wait till end of May or perhaps in early June to open up, while encouraging people to get more sunshine and develop their immunity on a natural immunity through the sunshine exposure, UVBs, and therefore the innate immunity through vitamin D and that kind of thing. More safer than rushing out and end up with yet another third wave as happening in some other countries. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm listening to you and I'm thinking maybe we should have a panel in the next few weeks, just several doctors, just right here, Bobby, Dolly, Sunil, Vimala, Vansa, and who else am I forgetting? But we have Cliff, and just do a Q&A. I think that would be a great session. Thank you for that, Sunil. Okay, anything else, folks?
Hi, Professor. This is Marlene.
Yeah, hi, Marlene. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing good. Thank you. Thanks for being here.
I'm kind of curious to get your thoughts on Janet Yellen's call for the global minimum rate tax.
Oh my God. I don't know where that came from.
Thank you.
Just, yeah, I couldn't, the number of emails I got after that one. Basically, here we have Janet Yellen, the United States, telling the rest of the world, hey, I'm just making up numbers, okay? Hey, look, we are at 8% taxes. Sorry, we are at, let's say, 35% taxes. You are at 28% taxes. So, our companies are moving headquarters from here to there. It's called tax inversion. So we are proposing that you also have 35% minimum global tax rate. Why? Why would they? When we talked about Kurno-Nash in class, Kurno-Nash happens when there is no further incentive for any player to make any more changes and be better off. So let's say we are all at 35%. That's not a Kurno-Nash equilibrium because it'll be incentive for one of those countries to say, we are going to move it down to 33 and 20 headquarters move there. So it's not going to work. It's the same thing as telling countries to not deal with Russia and send technology to Russia. Let's all make sure we don't sell XYZ technology to Russia. It doesn't work because it's not a Kurno-Nash equilibrium, because there'll be incentive for one country to break ranks and go, I'll sell you. And the whole thing comes apart. So God knows where that came from. Don't know why she had to say that. People burst out laughing essentially. It's a non-starter. He needs to calm down on the taxes. He really does. And he needs to re-engineer his tax language by saying things like, not changing the rates. I know disincentives. I'm going to remove the loopholes, but only when there's growth established. We are too fragile now. Just a few sentences like that. Be a John F. Kennedy. JFK understood the benefits of tax cuts, and he was a Keynesian who both models liked. Supply siders liked him, Keynesians liked him. But of course, he had incredible communication skills. He needs to take down the rhetoric and soften the edges and calm the suits down. Otherwise, I think we are fine. Hope I answered that.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, folks, any other questions? Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. And I'm seeing Fola there. Fola was in China in the plane reading my macro textbook. Langdana forgets nothing. So thank you, everybody, folks, for being here. We will send you the link and then another email later with answers to the questions in the chats. And Prachi, thank you so much for all your help making this happen. And hopefully we'll have another panel with the doctors and COVID. I'm thinking that will be fascinating. And you guys will do the Q&A and I'll just sit there and listen. Thank you guys, and hope again your C-bar and I-bar stays high. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Farooq.
Thank you guys. Thank you
so much.
Thanks for being here.